Alright, hello everyone. I'm just doing some preheating of the teapot and teacup, and then we will begin the process. So give me just a moment. Okay. How am I gonna do this? Okay. Have to move one of the lights just to... There we go. All right. Hello. Let me just get my phone out. And then I will check your guys' comments. So first of all, happy Easter to everybody. I had no idea it was Easter till before I started the stream. In my family, we don't really celebrate Easter, so it's not really a thing for us. It's just another day of the week. So I'm not really doing anything today. I know some people are probably going to wonder, like, oh, how's your Easter going? It's just a normal day for me. But a good day at that. So, alright, so what we have here is we have some McVitie's tea biscuits. I have a plate of roast beef tea sandwiches. I just so happened to have the ingredients, and it was funny because right before the tea stream, I'm like, I'm really hungry. I just want to eat something before I have the tea time stream, and so I thought I'll make myself a quick roast beef sandwich. And I thought, wait a minute, this could be eaten with tea. So so I saved it for tea. Yeah, I'm pretty weird, I know. Okay, so let's see who we got here. We got Tyler. Hello, Tyler. Hello, Beluga. Hello, Landon. Hello, Ozzy. Ozzy says, Alex, weather today here in Fort Mojave, Arizona is a high of 92, but it's dry. Jeez. Yeah, we have, it's kind of a cold day today. Temperature is around 45 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's pretty breezy and very rainy. So, I mean, it's not constant rain, it's showers on and off, but it's pretty good. I like it. It's one of the things I love about living in Northern Oregon is just all the rain. I love rain. I wanted to go on a walk today with my dad, but my dad was like, "Oh, it's raining outside." I'm like, "You live in Portland, like you have to be okay with the rain," you know? But anyway, so hello, Mike. Hello. I already said hello to Landon and Tyler. And, there's Daniel. There's Kevin. There's Brian. Hello. Hello, Dave. Derpy, how's it going? Brian says, why can I not see anything? I don't know. Everybody else doesn't seem to be having the same issue, but hello, Pookie. Pookie says, oh, Alex, I'm having a really hard time right now. Thank you for going live. I need a distraction. I know you have lived this life. It's awful sometimes, truly awful. It really is. I know what it's, I know what it's like. It really is just, but you're here now. I'm here now, so, you know, we'll just hang out. So, happy Easter to you too, Ozzy. Kevin says, did you know that 111 years ago tomorrow, around this time, RMS Titanic arrived at Cherbourg? Pretty cool. I didn't know that. I mean, I knew that before it went on its voyage, it went to Cherbourg, but I just didn't know when. Let's go ahead and turn on the water. Happy Easter to you too, Everett. Little Gamer says, this year will mark the 101st anniversary of the founding of the USSR, specifically December 30th. Oh, that's crazy. Papa Caller says, hello, fellow historians. Hello. Yeah, so today we're having some Earl Grey tea, chocolate-covered biscuits, and we have some roast beef tea sandwiches. So, pretty excited. I'm very hungry. I'm doing good, Brian. How are you? I have the train running again. So, did you guys see the Queen Mary update that I posted the other day? A lot of really exciting stuff, you know, and it seems that a lot of people agree. A lot of people in the comments were just like, wow, this is, you know, amazing. This is more than we expected. And to be honest, it's more than what I expected too. I think it genuinely surprised me, and I was just really happy, you know, to see all the progress that's happening and how well the ship is being taken care of right now. So, yeah, it's just fantastic. Brian, I already said hello to you. Let's see. Brian says, I did watch it. Nice. Ozzy says, Friday will be the anniversary Titanic. Will 111 years, I see. Let's see. Ozzy says, well done on the new Queen Mary. It was awesome. Yeah, I was just so excited to see it. You know, I had my friend Chris go there, film everything, and when I analyzed all the footage, I was just amazed. You know, I went through every last, you know, second of footage, just analyzing the ship, seeing what was different, what was the same. And there were a lot of, like, little things here and there. You know, there were areas of the wood paneling that had been repolished. And I didn't know for certain. I ended up talking to my friend Chris yesterday, and he was like, yeah, they were. The tour guide told us that some of the paneling has been refinished, like repolished. And yeah, it was just fantastic, you know, just fantastic. Brian says, can Long Beach fix the first-class pool? I mean, it can. I think the real question is when. It's not really a matter of if it can or how it can. It's really a matter of when. And the when is really more like years from now. Because the thing is it is a popular room. Everybody asks for the first-class swimming pool. Everybody wants to see the room. But the thing is that it will require lots of money to restore the room. And, you know, and right now they're trying to spend money on the really important stuff. The stuff that, you know, that either one is in sight and can be easily fixed, like polishing stuff or repainting stuff. But the other thing too is the safety stuff. So there's a lot of safety features on the ship that have had to be worked on, and that always takes precedence over something as expensive as the pool room. But yes, eventually they do want to reopen it, to, you know, refurbish it. It, you know, it's a huge part of what makes the ship so appealing to people. Everybody wants to see it. In fact, that's probably the #1 question I get on my channel when it comes to the Queen Mary in modern day. People always say, when will the pool reopen? So, yeah, but it's only a matter of when. Little Gamer says, what if a 1910s, 1940s passenger ship themed hotel opened on land? I don't know. I mean, it might be popular, but some people might think it's a bit tacky. I mean, like I went to Laughlin once and I stayed at that hotel. What's it called? The Colorado Bell. I think it's called the Colorado Bell. And it's designed to look like a giant riverboat. And, you know, the first, like, 30 minutes, you're kind of like, this is interesting. Like, this is a neat little concept. And then afterwards, you're kind of like, this is very tacky. You know, like, it's not real. You know, you're looking around, you're like, this is just a building shaped like a boat. So there's just something about it. There's what makes the Queen Mary so appealing is that it has history. You know it's a ship. You know, in everything about it reminds you that this is not a building. This was constructed for the ocean. You know, so it's things like that, I think, that make the biggest difference. So, Gishmek says, yes, I second that motion. Your Queen Mary update video is excellent. I already mentioned that on the comment section, but you saw online, so I thought I'd stop by in person. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it was an exciting one to make too, because, you know, normally like my Queen Mary update videos, I usually have a camera on me and I'm talking to the camera. But this one I was like, there's really no need for me to be on camera. Like, you know, the people want to see what the ship looks like. So I just did it off camera, which was better anyway, because I didn't shave that day. So I was just kind of like, oh, I look all stubbly and gross. So, yeah, that was a good thing in both ways. So Pookie says, what do you think of the decor on Queen Mary 2? Does it still scream classic ocean liner? Not necessarily, no. But I don't think that was the intention. I don't think they wanted it to look super like Art Deco classic liner. They did want Art Deco, but they wanted a modern take on Art Deco. Like, you know, in the early 2000s, which is when it was designed, they were kind of like, what would Art Deco look like today in the early 2000s? And I think they did a pretty good job of it, because I've seen a lot of video tours and vlogs of the Queen Mary 2. I could almost walk the decks in my mind just with how much I've seen. And the Art Deco is very subtle, but also very elegant. They have real wood veneers, which is just crazy. I mean, not everywhere. You know, a lot of the wood veneers are not real, but they still do have a lot of real wood veneers on the ship and stuff like that. There's an element to it that's really classy and nice, and I think they did a good job with the Queen Mary 2, honestly. That's one of the things I'm excited about when I go there, is on the ship, is seeing the modern Art Deco style that they have going on. So let's go ahead and empty half of these out. And then top it off. Okay, let that sit for a minute and get warm. Okay, so Tyler says, did you get my question about Laconia being a Christmas story? If you did, I must have spaced out. I did, I just forgot. But I don't know that I would consider Laconia a Christmas story. I mean, when I think of a Christmas story, I think of like a nice little Christmas fable, something that you can learn from, something that makes you happy at the end, you know? I don't think of like disaster and death and a horrible way to die as a Christmas story. You know, like, I don't think of it that way at all. I think of it as more like a Christmas tragedy. Daniel says, hey, Alex, I live in the Kings County, California, Kings County. Okay, okay. I live in Kings County, California, close to the river that has risen so much there are theories that it might flood. I mean, it could. If I remember Kings County very well, it's a very flat land, isn't it? And if I'm remembering correctly, it's somewhere. It's like Central Valley, California, and they say that as ocean levels rise, the Central Valley will become a sea again, because it used to be a sea, a giant sea in the middle of California. But then it drained out over thousands of years. But they say it might be a sea again because of the ocean level rise. Lachlan says, I saw the wood looked shinier. Was the wood repo listed or revarnished? Also, the promenade deck sports deck looked sanded down, but the starboard side... Hold on, starboard deck port side... promenade deck port side looked sanded down, but the starboard side still was... I can't pronounce that. Brown, but looked great. So there's a few things in there. I was never officially able to confirm whether or not any of the wood was polished or revarnished on the ship. The tour guide said it was, but he said it was polished. He didn't necessarily say it was revarnished. And I have a feeling it was not revarnished, which it should be. A lot of the woods on the ship do need a revarnishing. But I might understand their hesitancy to revarnish it, because those wood veneers are just millimeters thick. Just millimeters. You know, if you let a sanding, you know, machine sit on one spot for just a little too long, there goes the wood veneer. And behind it is a regular... I think it's just a regular pine wood, what do you call it? It's a pine wood plywood sheet. So the way that the walls on the Queen Mary were built was there was a 2 1/4-inch thick sheets of, I think it was just like a cheap wood, like some kind of pine wood plywood, sandwiched with a sheet of asbestos in between to prevent the wood veneer from burning too quickly if it catches fire. And then over the top of that, they put a very thin, just millimeters thick veneer of the rare exotic wood. And so you can sand it. It has been sanded before. But the question is, how far can you sand it till you accidentally go too far, you know? So I think there's a hesitancy to sand it down to remove the varnish. There are other ways of chemically removing varnish, but I'm no expert on any of that stuff. But I just imagine that, you know, the more work you do on the veneers, the more likely it is that you'll mess up. And I think that there might be a hesitancy to do that. But they do need a revarnishing, that's for sure. And if they could be revarnished with a non-yellowing type of varnish that we have today, they would look amazing. But they do look amazing right now. I mean, if you've seen from my footage that I took recently, the varnish is glowing gold. And I think what helps too is the LED lights. The LED lights really do help with that. But let's see. As for your promenade deck port side looks sanded down and the starboard side didn't. That is true. The starboard side promenade did not look sanded down yet. And I think it will be in the future, but I think the reason why they just haven't done it is because there's a lot of stuff there that needs to be removed in order for them to do it. There's a lot of ship models and things like that. And so those models would have to be removed out of that room. And I think they do have a temporary place for some of them. But I do think that they want to give the same treatment to that starboard side. It just hasn't happened yet. Again, the ship will be in an ongoing refurbishment project for years to come. It's not going to stop. Like, I know some people think like, oh, when the ship fully reopens, it'll all be done. No, it's going to keep going. They've already mentioned that the refurbishment work on the Queen Mary will just continue for years. There's so many things that need to be done. It will just take years to do it, and it'll be a constant thing. So, you know, each time you come to the Queen Mary over the next couple of years, there might be something new to see or something different about what you've seen, you know. Brian says, question for Alex. What happened to room B340? Why is it haunted? So, Brian, room B340 is not really haunted. It was... Before it was room B340, it was 2 or 3 first-class / third-class staterooms. And the reason why I say slash is because those rooms where B340 were designed to be used by either third class or first class, depending on how much of a ratio they had of those passengers and, you know, who needed the rooms more, you know. And so so they could be used between. But then those rooms, you know, when the ship came to Long Beach, they ended up gutting a lot of rooms on the ship. They decided to save pretty much only the most beautiful staterooms on the ship for use as hotel rooms, with the idea that over the years, the gutted rooms would be converted into modern hotel rooms. And B340 was one of those places where they wanted to turn it into a modern hotel room someday. They just never did. And then in 1989, Disney came in. They took over the lease of Jack Rather's lease of the ship. And Disney said, you know, we got to do something to revitalize the ship to get more people coming. What if we turn it into a ghost ship? You know, what if we, like, you know, just kind of invent a bunch of stories, accentuate a bunch of stories, use, you know, Disney has a history of amazing special effects technology. So what if we use special effects technology to create a scary room on the ship that people could really, like, feel like they're getting a real ghost experience without the danger of being chopped up in their sleep by a demon or something? So they created the idea of B340, which was already, like I said, a gutted room. And what they ended up doing was they fitted it out completely as a regular hotel room, but full of special effects that were hidden. So there were things like the faucet being able to turn on and off by itself in the bathroom so you could hear the water running. There were things like the lights in the room could blink at certain intervals. I think somebody had to activate all this stuff behind the scenes. I don't think they had access to view the room through a camera. I think they just were able to flip a few switches once in a while, drop into an office, flip a few switches, scare some, you know, the people in the room a little bit, and then continue on their merry way. Because again, it would be against California law to have a security camera in a hotel room. But they had things like there was a way to move objects in the closet. There was a way to create like a ghostly kind of blast of cold air. So they had ways of doing stuff like that, and they completely fitted out the room that way, and they marketed it as, you know, this big scary room on the ship that I don't think it was actually open for staying, come to think of it. Now that I think about it, I think it was just a stop on the tour. It was a stop on the haunted tour. And then they fixed out the first class swimming pool and all that, invented the story about Jackie walking around the first class swimming pool, all that kind of stuff. But then when Disney had to leave the Queen Mary, they abandoned the ship. I should actually start preparing for the tea. They abandoned the ship, but of course all their special effects were company secrets, so they took the special effects out of B340, gutted B340 entirely before they left. And B340 was once again a gutted room. It wasn't until 2018 that they reopened room B340 for hotel room stays. And of course, the company that was operating the ship in 2018 said, well, we got to market this really well. What if we tell people, oh, the room hasn't been occupied in all this time because it's so haunted and so scary that it wasn't safe letting people on, but now we decided it's safe. So it's that kind of thing. It's just marketing, So B340 is not really a haunted room. There are little tiny trickles of truth behind some of the stories, but those stories do not take place in that room. They take place in other rooms across the ship. So it's a lot of stuff like that. Let's see. Go back up here. Ozzy says, where Stay at the Bell has been closed over 3 years, no plans to reopen. The Bell. I think you mean the Colorado Bell. I didn't know it was closed. That's crazy. Landlin says, did you know the Titanic Museum in Pigeon Forge is haunted? No. I don't really... when it comes to hauntings, I believe stories where someone's like, oh, like, I felt a tap on my shoulder, or I heard someone speak to me, or, you know, something like that. I don't believe when, like, a tourist attraction suddenly becomes haunted. Because I'm like, it seems like a marketing ploy to me. I know marketing, you know. I worked for Disney. Like, I know what Disney does and how they, like, market stuff. So I don't know. I just don't believe that kind of stuff. And then especially after seeing how they marketed Queen Mary like that, it's hard to see it as the same kind of haunted. So to be honest, the haunted reputation has hurt the Queen Mary over the years. Because you make a lot more money in a business when you market towards families. Not that it has to be all kidsy and cute. It's just if a whole family, if you don't have naughty things happening everywhere, you don't have drunk people everywhere, you don't have adult stuff happening everywhere, then technically a place is considered family friendly, right? So the thing is, though, is that the Queen Mary, for the last 30 years, was not being marketed as a family-friendly place. There was just too much emphasis on the spirits and the ghosts and the, whatever. And the thing is that, as a business ploy, you start to realize that's not such a good idea to market the ship like that, because then the families don't want to come. Sure, there are people that do bring their kids. No one's going to argue that. But the majority of families will stay away. I can't even tell you on my channel how many people have come to me and been like, oh, I will never visit the Queen Mary with my kids. Like, it's so haunted. Like, I don't want to, ruin my children's childhood. And I try to tell them, like, it's not haunted. Like, maybe you might, hear a voice, see something in the corner of your eye, a tap on the shoulder, that kind of, but you're not going to see, like, some lady in white walking down the hallway and scaring people. You're not going to see, someone sitting at the foot of your bed, with red eyes or something like that. It's just not like that. It's just not, like, when you get on the ship, it is such a positive vibe when you get on the Queen Mary. It feels like it emanates love. You can tell people loved the ship, and it had so many good memories on it for so long. Yeah, there is tragedy here and there. That's kind of the interesting, multifaceted part about the Queen Mary, but that's one of the things I've been trying to dispel over the years of doing these videos, is that, bring your kids, bring your family, let new generations enjoy the ship without seeing it as, like, a portal to another realm. Like, that is just so sad. I can't even tell you, like, even to this day, right now when the tour's restarted, one of the number one questions the tour guys get in every room that they go to is, oh, is this room haunted? Like, here they are telling this amazing history, telling people about the amazing materials and craftsmanship, and the first thing people go is, well, is it haunted? Like, we gotta get people interested in stuff that I think matters, like, forget going on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. What matters in life is learning about crafts and art, learning about history, learning about engineering, learning about people, that kind of thing. And, I think that kind of stuff is more important to human nature than, ghost stories and social media, Don't unsubscribe. But, that's how I think, that's how I think. Let's see. Tom President says, Alex, of course, you're not the right person to ask questions about RMS Titanic. Fair enough, I'm not. But do you think that think you are the correct person to ask questions about Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth? I think so. I mean, I'll never lie to you. I'll never say, oh, I know without a doubt. Like, I'm not that kind of person. I think a lot of people got that impression of me, especially on Facebook when I first started doing Queen Mary videos, was they got this impression of me where I must automatically assume I'm always right. I don't. I'm willing to say when I'm not certain about something, or, you know, but if I feel like I've read about it a few times, I've been able to cross-reference it, I'm fairly sure about it, then I'll say something. And, but I mean, as you've seen on this channel, if someone asks me a question, I'll just outright say, like, whether I know or I don't know. And a lot of times, you know, depending on what they ask, especially if it's Titanic stuff, I will openly say, I just don't know. Like, I'll answer to the best of my ability, but then I will also mention that, you know, take it with a grain of salt, because maybe that particular question I'm not best suited for answering. But I would like to think, when it comes to the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth, that, you know, that is more my expertise compared to other things. I like to say that in my life, there are certain things I know the most about, all the way down to the least. Like, there's a list. I think, number 1, Disneyland. Number 2, Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth. And then everything kind of goes down from there. If you wanted to include something that is not currently on my list of interests, but was, cooking would probably be number 1. I do know more about cooking than I know about Disneyland or Queen Mary. But yeah, you know, when it comes to history and stuff. So that's kind of like how I see it. So yeah, I'd like to think I am. Okay. Sorry, I just realized I didn't check the time when I put the tea in there, so I'm thinking it was about 4 o'clock when it happened, so, Lachlan says, I also noticed that the lighting was much better. The wood walls were more brightly illuminated, and the main lounge was one vase lamps had one of the covers removed with LED inside it. Yeah, the vase lamps in the main lounge are definitely, receiving some repairs, because they have just not been taken care of very well, and there's been a lot of movies and TV shows filmed on the ship over the last 2 years alone, so that room has really been handled a lot. And apparently I heard that behind the curtain in the main lounge currently, because if you saw my update video, there was a curtain there. I found out what's behind the curtain is equipment for polishing the wood veneers, you know, and refurbishing some of the furnishings, because there's little like pedestal tables that jut out from the walls, and those need to be refurbished as well. So I heard that that's what's kind of behind that. So yeah. Doc says, hi Alex, so glad to see you on here tonight. I'm kid free this weekend, so it's a bit too quiet. Glad to join. Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, well, you know, hopefully the kids are doing well and having a nice Easter. Ron says, hey Alex, thanks for the Queen Mary update. Wow, things are moving along. Yeah, I have to say they are too. I was just really floored when I saw that. Hello Mike. SoCal says, thanks for the live, Alex. No problem. I knew it was Sunday. I'm like, I have to do something for Sunday. Geshmak says, I think it's realistic that the Russian submarine... Wait, do you think it's realistic that the Russian submarine will ever be removed? Those facts you reported in your video sounded pretty bleak. So do I think it's realistic that the submarine will ever be removed? Yes, it has to be. And the reason why is because the marine engineers... Here's something I didn't mention in the video. The marine engineers who surveyed the submarine had mentioned that the submarine is at risk of sinking, right? It is in really bad shape. And the thing is underwater, underneath the submarine, the land slopes downwards towards the bottom. So if the submarine were to sink... Ooh, that was really hot. Ow. If the submarine were to sink and then snap its moorings, it would tumble down the embankment and get pinned underneath the Queen Mary. And so if that were to happen, then during low tide, the Queen Mary would come down on it and crumple the bow, or risk damaging the bow at the very least. So there is a huge concern that if the submarine stays, it will affect the safety and the preservation of the Queen Mary. So City of Long Beach wants it gone. They want it gone. They're just not ready to spend the $5+ million to remove it. They want to find somebody who will take responsibility, the people who used to own it, and make them pay to remove it. Because you can't just abandon something like that and then expect somebody else to take care of it, you know. But nevertheless, it is kind of caught up in litigation. But thank you so much for the super thanks, Gishmik. Okay, so tea is poured. Lachlan says, I also saw the exterior handrails had handrails been refurbished, and the LED are much brighter than the green tinge fluorescence. The walls looked great, and the main hall LED and floor looking good. Definitely. Yeah, the exterior handrails, some of them have been refurbished already. There were a lot that still weren't really touched yet. But I think as we get closer to May, more and more of those will be done, because they've already done the handrails along the base of the, there's a deck right at the base of the mast, and people can walk around there right now, and the rails there have been refurbished. So, yeah, so I think it will, yeah. Little Gamer says, if you could do it for free, would you board a cruise ship? No, because I'd still have to make the effort to go. I just don't like cruise ships. Like, there's nothing about them that I really like. They don't appeal to me in any way. You might as well ask me to go to a shopping mall. I mean, I'll go if I have to, but I don't enjoy it, you know? Like, I don't, you know? So, yeah, I mean, I'll go if I have to, but cruise ships don't interest me. And I dropped my spoon. Let that sit over there. Okay, so... right, goes there. Brian says, yo, Alex, is there a secret about room B340? A secret? No, I mean, I think I already explained kind of the history of it and why people think it's haunted and stuff, but there's, aside from that, I mean, that's really the only secret, is that it's not actually haunted. That's the biggest secret of all, is that it's not actually haunted. So, Little Gamer says, who ordered the Queen Mary to be gutted? I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but in 1967, he was a type of city director that was put in charge of refurbishing the Queen Mary and turning it into a hotel and convention center. But he was a city official. I want to say his name is Ron, but I don't remember. Ron or Ronald or something like that. But I have the name somewhere in my research, just not out in the open. And he hired a specialized firm that went throughout the entire Queen Mary, cataloged everything, and their job was to report back to him and give him a game plan. To tell him what not to touch due to its historic significance. Right? They had laid out this massive plan. Like, here's how, like, if you want to turn it to a museum, convention center, and hotel, here's how you should do it without ruining certain things because the ship is so historic, right? And he looked at that file and he went, it's going to cost too much money to avoid all this. So he just decided to go ahead and bulldoze whatever he thought needed to be bulldozed to make things happen at a cheaper cost. Because there were certain things where, like, if you weren't allowed to touch it, you would have had to build around it, and it would have cost too much money. So he just was like, no, my job is to keep this as low cost as possible. So he just kind of ignored the whole plan that company came up with for him. And even after cutting those corners, the Queen Mary still ended up way over budget. And they couldn't fully build out the Museum of the Sea that they wanted because they were so over budget. But yeah, so that's kind of what happened, and that's why a lot of the stuff on Queen Mary was gutted back then. Hello, Years of Seas. Little Gamer says, hey, I believe you should add about 3 stars more drops of clickbait. Too much and it would ruin the taste. Too little and nobody eats it. 3 stars more of clickbait. I don't know what you mean. Jesus says, my 5-year-old daughter is really into ghosts and cryptids. We might make it a family thing. Lachlan says, I'm so excited that the Mary is getting the love she deserves. Period. Furniture and the observation bar, main hall getting new floor, and the promenade deck getting redone. Such great news. Yeah, it really is. Wyatt Murdoch says, are the ghost stories primarily from its liner days or as a troop ship? Both. They've taken actual events and even a few reported events and then kind of created a storyline around it. So what Disney did in 1989 when they took over was they had a bunch of people that come in and just kind of review the ship, talk to all the current employees working at the hotel, ask them if they ever saw anything, and then they would write it down, and then they went back and for their tours they embellished the stories to make them more interesting. So that's kind of what they did, but then a lot of stories were just outright made up, like the story about Jackie in the swimming pool. Jackie drowned in the second-class swimming pool, but for some reason she's seen in the first-class swimming pool. And it's like children weren't allowed anywhere near the swimming pools, and Cunard kept an amazing, impeccable record of who died on the ship, and nobody ever died from a drowning on the Queen Mary. So it's just kind of like, but yeah, a lot of it comes from the liner days, just people, like, they say certain ghosts are just remnants of, being passengers, and they say some ghosts are remnants of, prisoners of war or people who died during the collision with HMS Kurosawa. So, yeah. Doc says, now that it is open again and your friend gets footage, will you see some videos about the art on board? I've long been fascinated by how much good art is on board. Yeah, now that the ship is open, I can ask him to specifically go there and get stuff. I don't want to ask him too often, but then again, I did pay for his annual membership, so... Chris, if you're watching, you got a lot of Queen Mary visiting to do. But... yeah, so I do plan on having him go there multiple times this year to get specific footage for me. I need the ship to reopen a little bit more. I got him to get me footage of a lot of artwork on the ship while he was there on April 3rd. So I actually have some good video footage of the artwork, as well as artwork that I myself captured years ago and stuff like that. I also had him take some video footage of the wood veneers of the ship, so I can make a separate video about the wood veneers. This was all stuff I wanted to do. You guys probably remember a couple months back I put out a community post asking people, specifically women, but asking pretty much just anybody, do you want to see videos about the art and the design of the interiors of the ship? And there was a overwhelming, it probably was men and women who voted, honestly, because I think everybody likes this stuff, but everybody wanted to know more about the design of the Queen Mary, learn more about it, see more of the artwork and stuff like that. And so I knew immediately after that, I was like, okay, I gotta make videos about the artwork, the interior design of the ship, all that kind of stuff. So I had some footage of some of the art, and then Chris took better footage of other pieces of art and stuff like that, things I never got to. And then when next time he goes to the Queen Mary, which will probably be in June, I mean, not that he has decided yet, but I'm probably going to ask him to go in June, when the ship is more reopened. I'll ask him to go there, film a few more things, including more art, more wood veneers and things like that, so I can talk about it. But yeah, we got some really great footage when he went, and I was on a video call with him the whole time. Well, not the whole time, but a majority of the time, because he wasn't sure like what I wanted. I wrote a list for him, but even with a list, the things I wanted were so specific, and he doesn't know his way around the ship as well as like I do. Which is crazy because he's been there more often than I have, but I just became such a huge nerd. But yeah, so like I was on a video call with him and I said, okay, now go here and film that. Now go here and film that. And he was like, I'm so glad you're on this video call with me because I would have never known what you wanted with this footage. I'm like, trust me, I know. Like, that's one of the things where I was like, oh, I have to go to the Queen Mary to film it myself because only I know what I want filmed, you know? But it was good to actually be on a video call with him and kind of direct him. I literally was sitting there in my apartment directing him while he's 1,000 miles down south at the Queen Mary and he's shooting all the stuff I wanted. It was actually pretty funny, but pretty cool at the same time. Let's see. Little Gamer says, RMS Titanic's pool is working properly to this day. Might have a little more pressure and a lot colder, but it's fine. Won't turn you into a blob of human goo. Henry says, I went on a ghost tour on the Queen Mary in 2018, and the employees told us stories of experiences they have had with spirits. Are they paid to lie in a scene? In a sense. No, they're not necessarily paid to lie, but they have mentioned that they are encouraged to share stories. So, you know, take that how you will, but they are encouraged to share their personal stories if they have them. And I don't think I've seen a tour conducted by a tour guide who told fake stories of their experiences on the ship. I think they thought they experienced something, and to them that was something that they wanted to share with the audience on the tour, which is fine. It's like I said, I do believe in ghosts. I'm pretty sure I've seen a ghost in my life. I'm pretty sure that I've experienced some crazy stuff. I mean, I think when I worked at Disneyland specifically, there were places in the park that I am so sure was haunted. You know, obviously Disneyland doesn't advertise its haunted nature. They don't want people to know. But I feel like there were places that really were. And, you know, even for the longest time, I was kind of like, I don't know if I believe in ghosts. I mean, I think I've seen something. But then it wasn't until I moved up here to Oregon. I was staying at my sister's apartment for a while before I could get back on my feet and get my own place. I was staying at her apartment, and her apartment felt incredibly haunted. All three of us, me, my sister, and her husband, we all had weird experiences when we first moved in there. And it wasn't just because it's a new place. Like, we've been moving to new places all our lives. We've always had different apartments everywhere, all over Southern California and stuff like that. So we're used to moving into new places. This was just different. And we're like, this place feels different. And we were all having the same nightmares, which was really weird. We wouldn't tell each other about this. For a month, the first month, we were having the same nightmares of the same person in our nightmare. And it was this really, really, really tall man, just shrouded in shadow, wearing a black suit, all black clothing, but shrouded in shadow, so you couldn't really see his face. We had nightmares of him. And then eventually, one day, I could have sworn I saw him standing in the living room. Middle of the night, I get up to use the bathroom. I always woke up in my bedroom at 3 a.m. in the morning. Every morning, I woke up at 3 a.m. I don't know why. And I would just get up and I'm like, okay, well, I better use the bathroom or something, you know? Get up, use bathroom. Finally, one day, I think it was two months in or something like that, I'm turning the corner in the hallway to use the bathroom. And in the corner of my eye, I see somebody standing in the living room. And the living room is dark. But I think I see somebody standing there as a silhouette against the ambient light coming through the windows. And I do kind of like a double take, and I do see somebody there, and I go look again, and there is a person standing there. And I was like, am I awake? You know, like this is, the first thing I thought was there's like an intruder in the apartment, like stealing something. I immediately went to turn on the hallway light because it was just like 2 steps away. I turned on the hallway light and instantly it was gone. And I was like, okay, Alex, it's too late in the night. Didn't get enough sleep, but still part of me was like, I feel like I'm so awake right now. I feel like it was real. I turned the light back off. I don't see the shadow there. Not the same shadow. I use the bathroom. I come back out, and I feel like there is somebody there around the corner. And at that point, during my time using the restroom, I was kind of like putting aside my anxiety because I was like, oh, like I'm sure I just saw something. Like I just woke up, But once I came out of the bathroom, all of a sudden I just felt like I was not alone. So that made me think, I'm like, I'm seeing the same figure that was in my nightmare. And finally I decided, I'm like, maybe I'll tell my brother-in-law, because I'm like, he'll think this is interesting. So the next day I'm like talking to him, like, and I kind of like told him everything. And he had this look on his face, like this stone look. And he goes, I've had the exact same experience. He goes, since we've moved in here, I've been having nightmares of this guy. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. And then he said that he could have sworn just the other day that he saw the man in the hallway. Like he was like sitting on the couch looking at the TV, and the hallway is to his right in front of him. And he felt like he saw something in the corner of his eye, and there was like a tall figure, the same figure from his nightmare. And he looked and he was gone. And I was like, that is crazy that we're having the same nightmare. And then we ended up telling my sister. And my sister was like, yeah, I've been having weird dreams about this too, but I just thought it was like my dreams or something like that. And so we're kind of like, okay, that's weird. So, so I ended up like talking to her, and we found out, I can't tell you how we found out due to the privacy that I'm trying to keep, but we found out that in the apartment below ours, there was a young man, very tall. He used to play basketball. I think it was for college, but not that has anything to do with it, but he was very tall. And he ended up taking his own life at some point. And what we found out was he took his life I think it was just 3 weeks before we moved into our apartment on the floor above. And when I went to look at his obituary, I noticed there was a bunch of pictures of him. And due to the job he had, he always wore dark suits. Not always black, sometimes just navy blue, but he always wore suits. I showed it to my brother-in-law, and he's like, that's the guy, that's the person I'm seeing. I'm like, yes. I'm like, how? My sister was kind of like, oh, that's not the person I'm seeing, but, I haven't seen it as much as you guys have. So we're like, all right, whatever. Well, I move out of her apartment and move into this one over a year ago. And not even a few weeks in, my brother-in-law's like, your sister finally saw it. I'm like, what do you mean? And so my sister's like, yeah. So she was like saying how she was cooking dinner, or maybe she was cleaning up after dinner. She was cleaning up after dinner. Her husband, my brother-in-law, was asleep on the couch. And as she's putting stuff away, she's like looking down at the oven, closing the oven. She sees somebody walk past the kitchen in the corner of her eye. And when she looks, all she could see is just the back half of somebody wearing a suit, a black suit. And they walk into the hallway. And she thought, oh, that's weird. Like, why is my husband, like, dressed in a suit? Like, it's, late. Like, and she thought, like, that's weird. I thought he was asleep. So like, she, like, stands up and she's like, huh. And she looks into the living room and her husband is still asleep on the couch. And then she was like, what? And, like, she kind of, like, walked into the hallway and saw the figure go into my old room. And, of course, obviously, when she went to investigate, there was nothing there. And so it was that shared experience that we all had. And there was a lot more stories. There's a lot. I'm cutting out a lot because it would just take forever to mention it. But there was a lot of stories. And that's what made me believe. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, this place is haunted. You know? Now, when I moved into this apartment, nothing. Not a single thing. Not a single instance where I felt like, oh, this place is haunted. But her apartment? Yeah, totally. So I think that's why I believe in ghosts. I don't know what point I was trying to make, but I think the point I was trying to make was that I do believe in ghosts. I just don't believe that everything is haunted. So, but I should probably get back to people's questions and drink my tea. My God, I've been talking a lot. It's already been an hour and I'm just talking. Just going to try to skim through some comments that I don't necessarily need to respond to, but I'll read them. Moonzer says, Alex, if the Queen Elizabeth was still in Port Everglades, Florida, would you do a video there? Yeah, absolutely. If the Queen Elizabeth was still there, I'd go there to do a video. Little Gamer says, could they scrap the Soviet submarine one piece at a time, perhaps put a strong net underneath? They could do all kinds of stuff. So it's not necessarily the end of the world. They can do all kinds of stuff. The problem is that the more careful you are with it, which you have to be, the more expensive it's going to cost. And who's going to pay for that? Who wants to pay for that? You know, if someone came up to your front door and left a pile of rotting garbage on your doorstep, you know, and then the city comes by and is like, hey, you need to pay us a fee for letting this rotting garbage sit on your doorstep, are you going to be like, oh, yeah, that's my garbage, let me pay for that fee? Or are you going to be like, no, there's a guy that left his garbage on my doorstep. You're going to go after the guy who left the garbage on the doorstep. So right now, that's what's going on, is nobody wants to pay the $5+ million. And when I say $5+, it could be in the $10 million range to get rid of the submarine. But at the minimum is $5 million. And the city's like, we need that money for the Queen Mary. We can't afford to spend that on the submarine. We'll do it if we have to, but we're going to find whoever is responsible for abandoning this submarine, and they're going to be the ones to pay for it. So that's kind of what's going on right now. Top and Present Line says, Alex, would you consider your channel to be more of an ocean liner channel or more of a Disneyland channel, or an ocean liner Disneyland channel? I don't consider it either. I like to think my channel is everything about the age of steam. So not necessarily even about steam technology, because I do have videos of things that were built in the 1910s, and I talk about it. You know, I've talked about the history of San Francisco. I've talked about, you know, the Benson Hotel in Portland. All stuff that is in the age of steam, but not necessarily about steam. So I like to think my channel is a really well-rounded channel about the age of steam. So yeah, that's kind of how I think of it. I don't want to be known as exclusively the ocean liner guy or exclusively the Disneyland guy. Disneyland is what I started off with, but it's not necessarily the legacy that I want to leave on YouTube. I'm proud of my Disneyland content. I'm proud of the knowledge I have of the park, but I'm also trying to branch out and do other things that interest me. And so I think that's kind of what I'm aiming for. Carter says, can the SS Poseidon be saved? No, I'm sorry. Everybody's saying hello to each other. Oh, Lachlan says, are they going to restore the light fixtures in the main lounge that shine up towards the ceiling? I hope so, because those have never worked since the ship, you know, opened as a tourist attraction in Long Beach. They've been kept off. So I would like them to restore those, because those really add to the main lounge. Those lights that shine up, those add a lot to the main lounge. So I want them to. I think they might, but I don't want to get my hopes up, because that might be like one of the lowest priorities on their list. What's the menu today? Menu today is the chocolate-covered tea biscuits. I also have roast beef sandwiches, which I'm going to eat one because I'm hungry. They were frozen to make them easier to cut, but now they're nice and thawed. Yeshmake, about your questions of Queen Mary's hull inspection and if there's a place to see the photos. Unfortunately, no. If they did take photos, it's within the city archives. They haven't released those photos yet. Sheridan says, I have read that they are going to build a new ocean liner terminal close by, which will activate the area and draw visitors. Yes, they want to build they want to expand the Carnival Cruise Terminal, because there already is a terminal there, but it only can service one cruise ship at a time. They want it to be able to service at least 2 or 4 cruise ships, which would effectively double or quadruple the amount of money that is paid towards the Queen Mary's annual annual maintenance. And so that's what they want to do, and I've actually mentioned a little bit of that at the end of my recent Queen Mary update video. Moonzer says, I saw Chris's new 2023 Queen Mary video. It's pretty nice, isn't it? Moonzer says, can you go live on the Queen Mary? If I was at the Queen Mary, I would try to go live, yeah. Moonzer says that some guy lived on the Queen Mary, but I think it was to be a guard, so nobody boarded the ship during the pandemic. Now, there was a guy that lived there, but he was the director of the previous company. He was the director of Urban Commons, and he claims that he was there to kind of look after the ship, but I think he was living there because he didn't really have anywhere else to go, honestly. And I was pretty upset when I saw that he was living there, because he was living there with his dog, and he was living on, like, main deck. So if the dog needed to go out to go tinkle or something, it would have been a very long walk to take the dog out to use the bathroom. Like, so something tells me, like, I feel like his dog just went on the ship, and he just, you know, there's no one else on the ship, so he just was kind of like, oh, I don't care. Because, like, really, like, you know, is a dog gonna walk through the entire ship just to get out of it and then use the bathroom? I don't know. I don't think it would. Not any of the dogs I've ever taken care of. Moonzer says, Queen Mary's Bridge has 5 bridge telegraphs on the bridge. Technically there's more, but inside the wheelhouse, yes, there are 5. 4 for the engines and 1 for the steering. So that is how they do it. And then outside of the wheelhouse are more telegraphs. I believe there are 2 on one side, 2 on the other. And those were for giving commands for the mooring lines. So, yeah. Moonzer says 3 helms on the bridge for the Queen Mary, including the steel, well, iron mic, they call it, the iron mic. Yeah, so there were 2 telemotor helms for redundancy for steering the ship, and then there was the iron mic, and the iron mic was designed to keep the ship on course out at sea. So that way they didn't have to constantly have someone necessarily, like, holding the helm. They could kind of stand back and make sure the ship was just going where it needed to go. Pelly asks, what are some reasons why you were drawn to the Queen Mary? I think one of the reasons I was drawn to the Queen Mary is I've always liked Art Deco style first and foremost. There was always something about Art Deco style that really appealed to me. I just never realized it. I mean, I know that sounds weird, but every time I would see something that was in Art Deco style, I was always kind of silently fascinated with it. I was kind of like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, I wish I could do something or see something like that or have that in my house or whatever. But when I went to the Queen Mary, it was just so Art Deco. I was like, this is heaven. But the other thing, too, was that there is an element that I cannot explain. Because I've been to the Queen Mary multiple times in my life, but it was only the last time I went that something just clicked, and all of a sudden, I fell in love with the ship. I can't explain it. I don't know why that time of all times, but if you talk to a lot of people who've spent years on the Queen Mary, even as, you know, hotel employees, You know, a lot of them will tell you there is just something about the ship. In fact, there's actually a quote by Commodore Everett Horde, the ceremonial Commodore of the Queen Mary. You know, Everett Horde says there's something about Mary. And it's true. I've talked to my friends about it. I told my friend Shiloh, he's one of the first people that really taught me a lot about the Queen Mary, was my friend Shiloh. And I was talking to him, and he's like, you're right, Alex. He's like, there's something about the ship that draws people in. And, you know, it's just weird. And then, Steve, you guys, Steve on my channel, he was like, yeah, there's just something that just draws you in. And he's like, and then there's this weird thing that happens where, you start to see Queen Mary references everywhere. It's just kind of weird. It's just everybody who's like been involved with the ship for years will tell you the same stuff. It's almost supernatural, which is what's kind of crazy. And so I started noticing it too. I mean, you guys always know, like, a lot of times if I check the clock or something like that and I'm like, oh, it's time for me to like get off the live stream, or hey, someone just called me, I always check the clock and I'm like, it's 5:34 p.m. 534 is Queen Mary's hull number. So it's just really weird, like I got off the phone with my friend Chris the other day because I was talking to him and he was just like, oh, I gotta go, my grandfather needs me. I'm like, okay, see you later. And we hung up and it was 5:34 p.m. And it happens every single day. Something related to 534, something related to Queen Mary, it's just really, really weird. I've never experienced anything like that in my life. It never. And a lot of Queen Mary fans will tell you, like, yeah, there is weird stuff like that happens. So, but yeah, pretty weird. There's just something about the ship. It's just got this draw to it. I think that's also one of the things that inspired, Stanley Kubrick to make The Shining, because, well, okay, I know that's it sounds like a jump, but Stanley Kubrick was very inspired by the Queen Mary when he made The Shining, because, he read the book of, the Stephen King's book about, the hotel, but then he was kind of like, he was staying on the Queen Mary once, and he was just drawn to it in a supernatural way, and he said, this is what I want The Shining to feel like. And so he copied a lot of the elements and the feel of the Queen Mary and put it in The Shining. And so that's, yeah, it's kind of, there is something about Mary. Air Arrow, I don't know when the third funnel will get repainted. Probably just before May 12th, but I can't say with all certainty. Years of Sea says, I'm making a book about your apartment hauntings. Honestly, it's a really good story, but I feel like if I try to tell it, on a book or media, nobody will believe me. I mean, I made 3 videos about my experiences at Disneyland with it being haunted. Made 3 videos. And I still get a lot of people that are like, oh, you just made this video for clicks. And I'm like, I really didn't. I just wanted to share what I experienced, because one day I'm not going to remember it, One day I'm going to be too old or something. But I mean, I really don't, my channel is not about hauntings. It really just isn't. It's just about history. But it's just like, I can't deny that I've experienced certain things that I really cannot explain, So, yeah. Moonzer, yes, they did change the flat screens in 2012. Carter Asher says, can you go to Queen Elizabeth from 2010? No, because I don't like cruise ships. I will probably avoid the Queen Elizabeth cruise ship as much as I can. Little Gamer says, I wish I could see a drawing of this person or something. I mean, he was just really tall and so in shadow all the time. You couldn't see his face. You couldn't see anything. You could tell he was wearing a suit. It looked like it was all black, but then again, he was in such shadow all the time. You know, I learned his story, and you know the reasons. Well, actually, it's one thing I never learned was why he took his life. That's something I never learned, and it was a little bit confusing. But that is the nature of people who take their lives. You often just don't know why. You know that they're depressed, but why? You don't know. So it is pretty sad, though. And we moved in 3 weeks after he did it. We had no idea until we went and researched it. But I will tell you, living in my sister's apartment, there were neighbors that had moved in below us. They moved in a couple weeks after we did. And that family, you could hear, like, in the middle of the night, the kids would be screaming their heads off. I think they saw him. And like I've told people on my channel, like, we wanted so bad to go downstairs, knock on the door, and be like, "Have you guys seen a ghost?" You know, but we didn't want to be weird, you know. Like, we didn't want to be like the weird neighbors that are like, "Is your house haunted?" You know, like we did. So we didn't. We never did. We never did. But we wanted to so badly because we could hear the children screaming in the middle of the night. We could, you know, we could sense when something was going on. One time, we could hear the neighbors downstairs, because they were a pretty loud family, but we could hear when they all left the apartment, you know, and I'm sitting there in my room kind of working on a video. I need absolute quiet when I work on videos because I need to, like, record audio or something like that. So I'm sitting there and, like, I can hear someone pacing in the apartment below. Pacing the apartment. And I was like, that's weird. The whole family, like, just left. Like, what is that? I don't know. I don't know. Weird. So, let's see. Happy Easter, Moonzer. Oneless Family says, Hannah wants to know your favorite tea, please. My favorite tea is Earl Grey from Twinings. So Earl Grey is my favorite. Top impressive line. Yes, that is correct. The SS Great Britain. No, I feel like SS Great. Okay, yeah, okay, yeah. You know, my memory of this is really fuzzy, but yeah, that does sound about right. SS Great Britain was the first to do a regular crossing. Geshmake says, wow, if they expand the Carnival Cruise Terminal to 4 ship berths, the amount of money potentially earned and sent towards Queen Mary refurbishment / operations will be incredible. Absolutely, because currently, with only 1 ship being able to be serviced at the Carnival Cruise Terminal at a time, they earn about $2.4 million per year that goes towards the Queen Mary's annual maintenance. Queen Mary's annual maintenance is $5 million a year. So even if they make it so it's designed for 2 cruise ships, that will meet the entirety of Queen Mary's annual maintenance budget. And if they're able to do 4 cruise ships, that will quadruple the amount of money to $10 million, which means that not only would she make her minimum annual maintenance, but she would have an extra $5 million a year to do various upgrades. That is just incredible, you know. Let's drink more tea. Carter Asher says, did the Queen Mary in movies? The Queen Mary did in movies, yes. Maximo says, introducing the gravity buoyancy solution, new methods for propulsion, the use of water around the ships or maritime transportation of use. 2 free vertical forces become horizontal displacement. I don't know what that means. Kane says, what is that sandwich? It is a roast beef sandwich. Carter Asher says, can you re-upload the Queen Mary like you did make a video of the Queen Mary in 2020? I'm not sure what you mean. Carter Asher says, can Disney make the Queen Mary ride? They wouldn't. There's no reason to. Little Gamer says, if you could, would you work as a tour guide aboard the Queen Mary? That's a complex thing because naturally I want to say yes, because I love the Queen Mary so much. It would be so fun to be a tour guide. I've experienced being a Disneyland tour guide, so I know what it's like to give tours. And because I know so much about the Queen Mary, I don't feel like the average tourist could stump me on my knowledge. Maybe like someone who's really well learned, but but for the most part, I think I know enough that I could actually answer everybody's questions. And I would love to be a tour guide on the Queen Mary. But one of the biggest things, though, is I hate Southern California. I hate it so much. I love living up here in Oregon. I love being around the trees and nature. There's a river just steps from my apartment. I can take a trail along the river and enjoy natural beauty, I love being so close to nature, so yeah, I don't want to live in Southern California, but I mean, in a perfect world, the Queen Mary would be somewhere up here, and I would be a tour guide on it. Top Impressive Line says, Alex, have you heard of the Liberty cargo ships? Absolutely. I've been on a few Liberty ships in my life, and I've seen Liberty cargo ships. Little Gamer says he means the guided tour you uploaded some time ago. Well, I still have it on my channel. It's still there. It's the RMS Queen Mary narrated tour video, and it's still there. Hello, Goofy Rolls, and happy Easter. Gushmake says, is Sir Winston's or some fine dining restaurant coming back to the Queen Mary? I looked, but wasn't able to find any info on that. Yes, so Sir Winston's or some other fine dining restaurant will eventually be coming back to the ship. I say eventually because they haven't announced when yet. Currently, all the chairs that they were using at Sir Winston's are being used as props in the observation bar because they haven't yet purchased the new furniture that's going in the observation bar. So they're using Sir Winston's furniture. But they have not announced yet when exactly other restaurants and gift shops on the ship will reopen. They just said that eventually it will. So, Danielle says, what about Victory class ships? I don't know what that is. I don't know what Victory class ships are. Moser says, no, Steve. I guess not. I think Steve might be a bit busy. Little Gamer says, guided tour 2023 version. I see. You want a new version of the tour. So I am going to do that. I do have plans to do that, but I need more footage. I need the ship to open more. So I'm waiting till like June or something, because I need the ship to be more open so we can film more areas. And I will do an updated 2023 tour of the Queen Mary. But it'll take time. We need more footage. So Top Impressive Alliance says, have you been on the SS Jeremiah O'Brien? Yes, absolutely. I've been twice. It's a pretty cool little Liberty ship. Moonzer says, do you like the Queen Mary better or the Queen Elizabeth better? I like the Queen Mary better. So Daniel says Victory class ships were basically updated versions of Liberty ships, and they were considered stronger and faster. Interesting. Doc says, I do miss shamelessly flirting with Steve. Geshmik says Victory class ships are ships that supplied military ships. There's a Victory class ship museum in the LA harbor called SS Lane Victory. I've heard of Lane Victory. Top Impressive says you could probably say Liberty ships are the ugly ducklings. Oh yeah, that I've heard too. When I did a tour on the Jeremiah O'Brien, the tour guide said that they were considered ugly ducklings. And they were. They were not nice-looking ships at all. But it was interesting to be on it, you know, and see what it was like. And, you know, the fact that it was World War II era was very neat. Doc says, Alex, are there farms in the area of Oregon that you live in? I think Little People Big World was filmed in Oregon. They have a pumpkin farm. Yes, so where I live, it's funny. Where I live is like patches of farms and forest. So there's a lot of nature here when you want to like see forests and trees and, you know, climb down ravines and stuff like that. But then there's farms everywhere. So just like a mile south of me, there's a whole bunch of farms and stuff like that. But yeah, you don't have to drive very far where I live to see farms and stuff. So I like living out here. Like, I don't actually live in the city of Portland. I don't like Portland. I like some things in Portland, but Portland in general, no. I don't feel safe there. But where I live on the way outskirts is really nice, really nice. So it's really cool to like wake up in the mornings and there's like fog and, you know, you can see wild animals. There's a lot of wild animals where I'm at. And definitely a lot of birds. I've never seen such variety of birds in my life. Because I lived in Southern California, you had the usual. You had sparrows, crows, hawks, and seagulls. Sparrows, crows, hawks, and seagulls. So basically the four same birds all the time. And they're not particularly beautiful birds. They're very just gray, black, and brown, you know. But where I live, there are so many types of birds, I can't even fathom. We have all kinds of bluebirds, blue jays, red robins, red-crested I think it's the same one. Red-crested robin, whatever. Blue-crested blue jays, red-crested robins. We have bald eagles. I kid you not, there is a bald eagle nest somewhere near here because I can hear it all the time. We have hawks. We have ravens. I've seen a few sparrows. We have these little tiny, I think finches. I think that's what they are. I don't know, but they're really tiny birds. Really tiny. We have storks, cranes, ducks, geese, that's for sure. Especially this time of year, lots of geese stopping off, because I live near a bunch of rivers and ponds, so all the geese are stopping off and, eating and, floating in the water, relaxing. And then the other day, my dad and I were on a walk, and it was like in the middle of the, bright sunny morning, and there's an owl, a giant gray owl, perched on a branch. I've never seen so many birds in my life. It's so cool. So cool. Let's see. Jesus says, would you consider the cost of living in Oregon to be reasonable? I'm sure they are much less expensive than California. You better believe it. It is a lot cheaper up here to live. That being said, you also don't get paid that much for the same jobs. But yeah, technically, if you have let's say you have an at-home job in California, and you're able to keep that same job but move to Oregon, you'll get the same amount of money you always got, but your cost of living will be a lot further down, a lot cheaper. So like we don't have sales tax on things, which helps a lot when you're buying groceries, when you're buying random stuff, you need to buy some stuff for furnishings in your house. No sales tax, which saves you a lot of money. And then the other thing too is just like living here. So like a studio apartment in Southern California, where I used to live, specifically like in Orange County, near the 10-mile radius of Disneyland, you can expect for a studio apartment, one that is as nice as this one, to cost somewhere around like $3,000 a month, right? I'm not kidding. That's around $3,000. Maybe you're lucky if you get it for $2,700 or something like that. But this one, based off of the contract I got it off of a year ago, this one is $1,300. That's it, $1,300 for this studio. And this studio is nicer than the ones I saw in Southern California. It's bigger. The ones I saw in Southern California were something along the lines of 300 square feet. This one is like 425. So it's huge. It's a huge studio apartment. And and technically the complex I live in is considered a luxury complex. Maybe borderline luxury, like between good and luxury. Right? So it's like right smack dab in between. But for the prices, it's really good. Like it's affordable for me. And then I'm about to get a 3-bedroom apartment, because my dad needs somewhere to stay. And so I'm like, why don't we just, combine our resources and we'll get a bigger apartment, and we'll have an office and everything so I could do my live streams and stuff from the office, and I can confidently say for the price that I will be paying for the 3-bedroom, it is still about $1,500 cheaper per month than what I'd be paying for the same high-quality 3-bedroom apartment in Orange County. Probably even more than that. Probably like $2,000 cheaper. depending on, depending on where it is. But these are like nice quality apartments. I don't think I've ever lived in apartments that were this nice before. And yet these are cheaper than where I've ever lived, So it's incredible. I'm trying to think, like, yeah, I don't know. It's incredible. It's a lot cheaper here, so. Tyler, I don't know about Tweety birds and red robins, or I mean, we have red robins and stuff, but Jesus says, does autumn feel like what autumn should feel like? Yes. So one of the things I was really happy about when I moved up here to Oregon is that there are actual seasons. So when living in Southern California, I lived there my whole life. There really weren't any seasons. Winter was not very different from summer. It was just so very similar. The only difference is that you had cooler temperatures in winter and maybe an average of more rain. But it was essentially the same. It was just boring, in my opinion. And then, of course, in where I lived, Orange County, LA area, it's a lot of concrete. Like a lot of concrete, so you don't really get that feeling of being near nature. But up here, there's a lot of nature, lots of patches of forest everywhere, and every season is different. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's like right now, it's turning into spring, and right now the trees outside my apartment are blooming with these beautiful white flowers, just tons and tons of them. I would show you, but you would see the apartment near my building, and it has the address on it, and I don't want you to know where I live. But, there's this beautiful, like, blooming right now that's going on. And we have a lot of cherry trees, a lot of, cherry trees, so the flowers on the trees are blooming, and, so that's what March is like. Summer is very green. Autumn is an explosion of reds, yellows, and oranges. It's absolutely the most breathtaking thing I've ever seen in my life, because I had never been anywhere before. Like, I've never seen autumn in another part of the country. So I know when I first moved up here, I thought, oh, winter's going to be my favorite because it snows up here, right? So I thought, oh, I've always wanted to see snow. I've always wanted to experience snow. And see a snowy landscape, and I knew that the forests around here would be covered in snow during winter. But it turned out like autumn was my favorite time of year because of all the colors. During autumn, I'll take walks every day and just take photographs of all the trees. It's just so beautiful. So autumn became my favorite. And I do love winter for the colder, rainier weather, and I like it for the snow. Believe it or not, the snow doesn't bother me so much. I don't really leave when it's snowy, so there's no problem with me getting stuck on the roads usually. But I do like taking walks in the snow. I love having just different seasons. It really just, it feels good, So yeah. Hello, John. Happy Easter. Ears of Sea says, do you know how and why the Queen Elizabeth went to Port Everglades without refit? I mean, I'm not sure I understand the question, because Queen Mary didn't need to be refitted necessarily. Queen Mary was refitted because they wanted to build a museum inside, but they could, if they wanted to, have kept all the machinery inside the ship. I think there's a misconception that Long Beach was ordered to remove the boiler systems on the Queen Mary. They weren't. They were allowed to keep them. In fact, the contract stipulations for both Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth being sold was leave everything on board. We want it. That was what it was. And the Queen Mary arrived fully furnished with all the china and everything. And, the city of Long Beach wanted to sell all that stuff to make more money to pay for the museum. So, so it wasn't that they had to get special permission or anything to leave the machinery on the Queen Elizabeth. It was just that Queen Mary was going to be turned into a museum, so they purposely took all that stuff out when it arrived. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question. Milo says, do you want the Queen Mary drive again? Like, do I want her to sail again? No. I am perfectly happy with the Queen Mary being permanently moored to a dock. That way I know she's safe, she won't sink anywhere, and, you know, she's close enough to land that we can take care of her if something happens like what happened recently. If a ship is out in the ocean, there is always a chance that something will go horribly wrong, and it will sink, and it'll just be left there. So, I'm happy that she's permanently moored to the harbor. I do not want her to go anywhere. She has, in my opinion, she has earned her retirement. She deserves to relax. So, Jesus says that means the dollar goes a lot farther in Oregon than in California, assuming you have a job in the same state you live in. Yeah, I mean, technically the dollar does go a lot farther up here. But again, if you have a job in the same state, you're being paid a little bit less than what you would be paid in other places. So it doesn't feel like that to people who live up here. So, you know, if you live in LA and you clean tables for, what is it, $15 an hour or something like that, right? And to you can barely afford, you know, your apartment. If you move up to, you know, let's say, I don't know, McMinnville, Oregon, or you move up to where Cannon Beach is, or Astoria, you might get hired at $12 or $13 an hour. So it doesn't feel like you're getting more for your buck, even though you are. So that's kind of what I'm trying to say. Daniel says, is there any difference in Northern California? Yeah, Northern California definitely feels different than up here. Northern California has a lot of redwoods, a lot of sequoias. So everywhere you go, there's like redwoods and sequoias. They have a lot of the same trees we have, not every one of them. They have lots of cypress trees too on the coast. But it does feel different than Northern California. That's for sure. Tyler says, I have to ask, are there swamps in Oregon? Yeah, technically there's, I mean, it depends on what you, like, define as a swamp, because technically a swamp is also kind of a wetland, and we have wetlands. Like, I live across from a wetland. I'm surrounded on water on all sides, actually. There is a river that runs west and north of me. There is a pond and a lake that is to the east of me, and then south of me is a wetland. So I'm actually surrounded by water on all sides, and yeah, it's you know, it's beautiful. But I think the reason why you're asking is because you want to know about quicksand. You always ask about quicksand. Milo says, "What is your favorite ship in Germany?" Ooh. I do have one on my list of favorites, and it is the Kronprinz Wilhelm. I want to say 1894. I don't remember if that's, I think that's it. But it among the German ships that I've heard of and that I've seen pictures of, that is the one that I would deem as my favorite. But that being said, I don't yet have a full understanding of its entire history or its design. Malibu Company says, what area are you in? I can't specify for my own safety, but I live on the very, very far outskirts of the Portland metropolitan area. So, yeah. Milo says, or France. One of my favorite French ships is the City of Paris, and then another one is SS France of 1912. If I remember that correctly. It might be 1910. I always get the two mixed up because one is from 1910, the other's from 1912. So I get them mixed up. Oh yeah, Jesus. I've been to Lake Elsinore. Yeah. Texas is just a humid version of California. I believe that. Doc says, your descriptions sound so beautiful. I think we need another Japanese garden tour, but with classic Alex narration this time. I want to do that, actually. I want to do a Japanese garden tour and then like talk about the history of it and how they built it and stuff like that as we do the thing. So I might do that. I actually did try to go to the Japanese garden with my dad a couple months back, but we had something to do, so we couldn't finish. Chris says, hey Alex, if you want to see a lot of snow, move to Missouri. I don't want to see that much snow. I want just enough that there's a nice dusting and it's still easily walkable. I don't want to be caught in a blizzard. Ron says, Eastern Oregon is part desert. Yes, there is a desert. So we are surrounded by mountains. So there are two mountain ranges. One is the... well, I forget what they're called, but they're the coastal ranges. And then there's a valley called the Willamette Valley, and that's where I am, along the Willamette River. So I'm in the Willamette Valley, and the Willamette Valley, it goes pretty far down, and it's all forested, and there's lots of farms and stuff. And then to the east of me is the Cascade. No, the Cascades... oh, I forget. Anyway, to the east of me is an even larger mountain range, and that's the one where Mount Hood is, and a lot of other ones in Washington as well, especially Mount St. Helens is along that one. But yeah, and here there is Mount Hood, and immediately east of Mount Hood, it becomes desert. So where I live is very foresty, like just love it. There's just a lot of trees. I've never seen so many trees in my life. I love it. I love it. So, but yeah, east of here is desert. And, you know, deserts are beautiful, but I would not want to live in a desert. I like living where I live. Nice and cold all the time. Nice and not... I mean, it is humid, but not hot humid. It's always cold humid. You know, we can have 94% humidity up here, and it could be 30 degrees outside. So, I like it like this, you know. It's nice. It's very green. Daniel says, wait, what happened recently? I don't know what you mean. Corridors. Moonzer, you did ask me. You asked me what video I saw the Queen Mary's corridors, and I told you that it was it was in a video called... oh God, I always like forget names of things right when I need to like say it. I just had it and then it just like disappeared. It's called Getting There Is Half the Fun. It was filmed by Cunard in the 1950s. So you can see a lot of rooms and corridors in the RMS Queen Elizabeth. Yeah. Chris says, hey, Alex, I remember the year of winter in 2002 in Marceline, Missouri. We got ice cream. We got about an inch and a quarter of ice. Storm knocked out the power for 3 days. Jeez. Carter Asher says, what capital city are you in? I'm not in a capital city. The closest one, I mean, technically the capital of Oregon is Salem. So, but I'm nowhere near Salem. I'm something like an hour north of Salem or something like that. So I'm nowhere near Salem. Jackson says, remember that anchor room they found on the Queen Mary a few years back? Do you know if that has any plans for it? Yeah, that's the one that they marketed, that they found it. They knew it was there. But yeah, sorry, I don't like marketing ploys. That they just bother me. But yes, so they are still aware that it is a potential asset that they could use for tours. But right at the moment, their biggest concern is getting the parts of the ship that were open in the year 2020, getting them reopened. So right now, that is their biggest concern. So once all that is done, they might look at opening areas that have been closed off forever, like the call it the I don't remember what it's called anymore, but it's a capstan room, basically. It's got all the machinery for all the capstans that run the mooring gear and anchor chain system on the forecastle deck above. So, yeah, they are considering that, but it is very low priority. Little Gamer says, do you know about the German liner Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse? Of course I do. Carter Asher says, can you do outside live streams? I can, but I just am never anywhere where it's doable. You know what I mean? Like, I tried doing a live stream when I went on a nature walk. But the thing was that we had really bad cell phone reception, because when you try to do nature walks, you're very, very far away from cell phone towers. So, especially when you get into the valleys and stuff like that. So we were doing this nature walk, and it had a little tiny valley created by a creek, but the valley was deep enough and wide enough that you just didn't get good cell reception. So the whole live stream was so pixelated, and people were upset. They were just like, "Why are we even watching this?" I'm like, I didn't realize it was going to look that bad, you know. So yeah. So I would love to, but it just looks terrible. That's the one thing about Oregon, is there's a lot of nature, so cell phone towers are very spread out, and it makes it difficult to live stream being in nature. So, Chris Surfa says, well, yeah, I've driven by Lake Tahoe, but I've never been there and stopped and looked at it. We were in a rush to get to Yosemite, and yeah, but I never specifically drove to Lake Tahoe. Dino, to answer your question about World War II ships that were converted to liners, I've never heard of any that have, so I don't know. Kevin, yeah, that does make sense. 1901 sounds more like it. Chris Surface says, hey, Alex, it would be kind of interesting to have a liminal space video of RMS Queen Mary. You know, I have done research upon research of liminal spaces to understand what the heck that is. I have spent hours poring over it to understand what is considered a liminal space versus what is not considered a liminal space. And I still don't know. So I've given up on it because I want to I've seen people post videos of liminal spaces, and I don't quite understand it. I'm like, it's an empty room. I'm like, I don't get it. And then people are like, it's not just that it's an empty room, and they try to explain it to me. I'm like, I don't get it. To me, it's like an empty room, you know, like, I don't get it. So yeah, there's something about liminal spaces that the concept just goes right over my head. Jesus says the question about what happened was, what incident happened to the Queen Mary where you said you want it to stay docked? Incident? There was no incident. Someone just asked me, like, do I want the Queen Mary to sail again? And I just said, no, she's earned her retirement. She should stay docked. Yeah, there was no specific incident. Geshmek says, have you ever considered returning to work as an executive chef? You know, I've tried so hard to work my way up when I was a chef, and it is not an industry I want to be in anymore. It's not rewarding by any means. It's nothing but really hard work, which I'm very good at. I know there's a big stigma around fat people and being lazy. But I am a really hard worker. I've always was the hardest working person in my kitchens. I always made it a point that I worked harder than my employees in order to show them that I'm willing to do the same stuff that they do, and not just be the ones to call the shots. But it is really hard work with no reward, and you don't even get paid very much. You're basically like, like when I was a chef, I would be making amazing food for people and then going home and barely having money to buy noodles. Like, I just kind of realized, I'm like, what is the point? Like, what is the point? I wasted so much money going to culinary school because I really wanted it. I really wanted to be a chef. I really wanted to learn how to cook and just do amazing stuff. And in culinary school, I excelled. I was really good at everything. But yeah, it's just, it wasn't the life for me. I think in my life, I've pursued many careers. Being a chef was the longest running one that I pursued. I pursued that for years and years. But I tried a bunch of different careers. And each career, I was just disillusioned by it. I just kind of realized, like, this is not what I thought it was. This is not what I want it to be. And for the longest time, I felt really lost. I was kind of like, what am I going to do? Like, I've always firmly believed that if you want to be happy in your career, you should have a job that you enjoy doing. But that's easier said than done, because most people, including myself, have had a very difficult time finding jobs that they enjoyed. I think in my whole life, the only job I truly enjoyed was when I was a tour guide at Disney. But even then, there was so much drama in Disney. There's so much drama with employees. People would start stuff just because they were bored. And then you'd have to deal with the management. The management would be like, oh, this person said this about you. I'm like, I never even spoke to that person. I don't know who that person is. I'm like, I think they're just bored and they want to say something and start something because, the job can be sometimes really repetitive, especially when you work in the Lost and Found department, like I did when I was a tour guide. Worked in Lost and Found, and that job got really repetitive. But I liked that job because when I found stuff that belonged to people, I could call them up and be like, hey, we found this. And they'd be like, oh my God, thank you so much. So I really liked that job. But I worked with some people, and I always said hello to everybody. I always greeted people. I always treated every day like it was a really good day, because I knew that my demeanor would affect other people. If I came to work like, oh, this is a cruddy day, people were going to react to that. So I always came to work positive, right? And yet, somehow, I still ran into people who were just like, and then they would make up the weirdest stuff to management. and be like, oh, Alex, this, and that. And they're just like, even the management was kind of like, that's weird because we don't notice that about Alex. Like, he's usually really good at what he does and, whatever. But I think over the course of time that I worked for different companies and corporations, and at one point I worked for myself. I was self-employed. I had my own cafe, and I was the chef of that, But over time, I just kind of realized, I'm like, I hate working for people, and my dad feels the same way. My dad, I've seen him work. He is a really hard, dedicated worker. If you would be lucky to have him as an employee, because he's so dedicated, and he does what you want him to do, and he does it really well. When he worked for Disneyland Hotel, he was the top employee to upgrade people. Disney always wants you to upgrade people to new rooms. They can earn more money that way. And he was the top guy to do it. He was really good at selling you on, this is a good room to have. But nobody recognizes that kind of stuff at work anymore. You'd think like, oh, you do a really good job and your employer will recognize you and offer you a raise or a bonus, or it doesn't work like that anymore. They just go, oh, you did really, really well. Well, it would be easier if you just didn't do that. And you're just like, what? Like, yeah. So, yeah, I was really, really fortunate that my YouTube channel took off and I was able to start doing that full time. I found out the other day, you guys, I know I only have 42,000 subscribers, but I found out the other day I'm in the top 2.5% of YouTubers. So in order to even have the amount of subscribers I have, puts you in the top 2.5%. So it is really, really rare to get where I've gotten in YouTube. And I feel really, really just blessed to be in that position. To be in a position where I don't have to break my back for an idiot who doesn't appreciate what I do. I can do this every day, talk about my favorite things, do research, learn more stuff, and then teach it to people. And then not just that, but I do these streams because it makes people feel good. Like there's a lot of people, I found out, I didn't even realize this, but most people today do not have the social lives they had before the pandemic, or even before that. A lot of people, they don't get to hang out with people. In fact, I think I fit in that category because all my friends are in Southern California. I don't really have friends up here. So I really am all alone every single day. I don't think of it that way because I'm always on a Discord call with my friends, just hanging out. If it's late at night, we'll go play a game or something online, and it doesn't feel like I'm alone. But I really do. I am. When I think about it, I'm like, every day, it's not like I'm going out and meeting people for a drink or something. Like, I'm at home all the time, unless I'm out walking, or with my family. So I think that doing these streams actually really helps people to feel like they're here with me, just having a conversation, which actually does loads for people's, mental health, because a lot of people just don't get that kind of interaction anymore for whatever reason. It could be their job, it could be, the effects of what happened to the country or the world after the pandemic and stuff like that. So I've been put into a really gifted position in life, and I do not take it for granted one bit, because I know what it's like to work jobs that you just hate. So yeah, I know. I was telling my friend the other day, I was like, I always thank my viewers for the support that they give me on my channel. I said, but I just hope that they know how grateful I am, because it has changed my life so for the better. I was so lost before I really got involved with YouTube. I was just really lost. I was like, what am I going to do in life? I love history, but there's no jobs or education that I can achieve that would give me that satisfaction. Like, I don't want to be an archaeologist or officially like a museum historian. Like, I could try to go to school for that, but my schizophrenia makes it worse. It doesn't work, you know? So I was really lost before YouTube. I was just like, what am I going to do? Because I want to be working. I want to do amazing stuff, but I want to be happy in what I'm doing, you know? So yeah, I just want everybody to know how grateful I am for everything. Just people watching my videos is enough to have provided me with this amazing life I live. It may not last forever. YouTube and stuff like that is just another website that one day might go defunct. But, you know, for now, I am just really grateful, really happy. So, back to conversation. Let's see. John says some people are not happy and want to make others sad. Yeah, there's a lot of that. My goodness, even on YouTube. I was talking about the Queen Mary on my channel, and this guy commented, and he goes, "It's just a ship." He's like, "Why do you refer to the ship as her or she? It's just a ship. Who cares?" And I'm like, you know, I said to him, I very calmly, because I don't argue with people anymore, but I'm like, you know, everybody's got their passions in life. To you, maybe a piece of art is not just a piece of art. Maybe a car is not just a car. Maybe, you know, a tax document is not just a tax document. You know, let people have their passions. If I love ships so much that I want to respect them by referring to them by the maritime tradition of, you know, she and her and whatever, like I do with the Queen Mary, you know, just let it be. You know, I'm not hurting anybody. You know, I'm teaching people about maritime history, you know, but then he responded something. I think he was just a troll, to be totally honest. So I did not respond to him after the next comment, but I think he said something along the lines of like, oh, it's like you're supporting British colonialism or whatever. And I'm just like, let me tell you guys what I think of British colonialism. It was horrible. No one's saying it was good. I think, though, that there is a difference between learning and understanding history, appreciating certain aspects of history, while still respecting the fact that history altered the course of humanity. You know, maybe you might see the Queen Mary as a piece of British colonialism. I don't know if I can change your mind on that. But I don't think there's anything wrong with appreciating the ship today. I don't think there's anything wrong with appreciating the engineering behind it. You know, but, you know, I guess some people can't separate those two concepts from each other. The engineering, the art, and then what the empire represents, you know. So I don't know. I feel bad, obviously, for what the British colonial empire did. No one is going to say, that was a good thing, you know, but I do think that I can separate engineering, art, and design from, you know, like, what does the Queen Mary have to do with, you know, what happened in India, you know? It just, I don't know. But, yeah. Dino says, I'm jealous that you have chef skills. I barely know anything about cooking. You know, the thing is, though, like, now everybody asks me. So, like, especially my sister, she's always texting me. She's like, how do I do this? How do I do that? Recently, she decided she wants to start doing sourdough bread, and breads are my speciality. I mean, I have a well-rounded education in food, but my focus was breads, because I loved baking bread. But it is difficult to explain, you know, how to make bread to somebody who's never done it before. So, Rena says, I only know one person who went to culinary school, and she didn't stay in that industry. Yeah, you know, a lot of people don't. It doesn't pay very much. It's not very rewarding. You know, I know that there's a lot of great movies and TV shows. Like there were two movies that really like were my favorite throughout my time in culinary school and learning how to cook and all that stuff. One was Princess and the Frog, the Disney movie. I love that movie because I could kind of see a little bit of myself in Tiana. I wanted to start my own place. I really love New Orleans style food, so I really wanted to have my own place that made beignets and stuff like that, you know. And then there was the other movie, which was Chef, which came out around that time, and that was with Jon Favreau. He directed it and starred in it, but doesn't he always? And then later on, there was a movie made called Julie and Julia. So a lot of people don't know this. They think that because I'm a guy, I don't appreciate any like female like people, like historic people, but like Gordon Ramsay was not my number one idol for cooking. Believe it or not, it was Julia Child, because a lot of people don't realize she wasn't just like some woman that cooked on TV. She received an actual culinary education at Le Cordon Bleu in Paris, and she exceeded and was like the top of her classes. And instead of becoming like a world-renowned like chef as you would consider it, she wanted to bring the art of French cooking into the average home. Because at the time, what everybody was eating for dinner, believe it or not, a lot of people were eating a lot of prepared foods, frozen meals and stuff like that, because people were getting really, in the 50s, people were getting really, really busy with their lives to the point where they almost entirely stopped cooking at home. Because it became daunting for a lot of women, especially because back then, I know people think of 1950s housewives women, but actually in 1950s, women had a lot of work to do besides being a housewife. So it was becoming really difficult. And so Julia Child was like, well, let's keep people cooking real food, but let's show them that this stuff doesn't have to be daunting, doesn't have to be hard, and it can still be delicious. And she did her TV show for decades and decades, and yet she was like a classically trained cook. It was just amazing. So, you know, I've seen so many videos of like Emeril Lagasse, who was another kind of idol of mine. Emeril Lagasse cooking with Julia Child, you know, and she had this aura about her that everybody just, when she walked into a room, it was like mad respect, you know. So that's kind of one of the cool things about Julia Child that I like. But yeah, so I was so excited to be in the industry, and then when I got there, I was like, this is nothing like it looks in movies and TV. You'd think like, oh, there's so much respect for chefs, but there's respect for celebrity chefs. Regular chefs are just like the people in charge of your food, and they don't really get that much appreciation, you know? Yeah, so... Geshmik says, thanks for answering my question about being a chef. It's interesting to hear your answer. Just like you, every former chef I've spoken to doesn't miss the job. Yeah, I don't miss it. I mean, I miss certain aspects. You know, when I had my own cafe, we had a really loyal customer base. And it was actually, it wasn't just me. You know, my co-partner in the business was my friend. His name is Brian. I'm trying to like be, you know, keep my friends safe for security purposes because I get death threats, so I don't want them to get death threats. But my partner in the business was my friend Brian, and he did all the work with coffee and stuff like that. So he was the coffee and tea expert, and I was the cook. And so, you know, I had people that worked under me, and then I would teach them how to make everything, and then he had people under him. He taught them how to make everything. Brian was really good at getting customers to be very loyal because he would have conversations with everyone. He would find like what your interests were, and he would like talk to you on end about everything you loved to talk about, you know, and he found actual fascination with it, you know, and stuff like that. And we would just have people that came in every day. We had one lady that was like, was like, she's like, I don't need coffee every day. She's like, I don't usually get coffee every day. She goes, but I come in because I love talking to you guys, and so we were just like, wow, this is really something. We did really create, we set out to create something with that place, and we succeeded. We created a place where everybody wanted to come and hang out. All the customers would talk to each other. You don't see that. You go to Starbucks, everybody is sitting by themselves in their own little tables, and they don't talk to each other. But in our place, everybody was talking to each other. You'd have people from one side of the room going, like, carrying on a conversation with the people at the other side of the room, and they don't even know each other. And it's all because, me and Brian are sitting there talking to people. We're getting their orders ready, we're cooking stuff, and we're having conversations with them from across the place. It was so cool. It was so, so cool. We had a color-coded system with the coffee mugs. So, like, certain people, they'd have a certain color mug, and other people would have a certain color mug. It all depending on what they wanted, what they liked. It was kind of like people had their own little cliques and clubs within it. It was just so, so cool. I loved it. And you might wonder what happened, Alex. What happened if you loved it so much? Well, the pandemic happened, unfortunately. The business could not support itself. We sold food at our place, which California had. I don't know if it was like this for all over the country, but in California, the only businesses that could stay open were considered essential. People who made food. If you sold groceries or if you cooked food, you were considered an essential worker because people can't live without food. So we were allowed to stay open because we served food. But until that point, we were never part of DoorDash, never part of Grubhub, because I always felt that the food I made, it really only tasted good when you had it right then and there, which is true. We had a lot of stuff like beignets. You let beignets get cold, they are not the same. They are just not the same. I served croque madames and croque monsieurs. Those get soggy and wet and gross if they sit. So the problem was we never did Grubhub and DoorDash because the foods we had just do not last outside of the restaurant. And so, unfortunately, people were not allowed to come in and sit during the pandemic. We had always to do takeout orders, and people were not happy with their takeout orders. And I had to explain, I'm like, this is just food that doesn't work. We had to come up with a different menu entirely, which made people angry because they're like, well, we love the beignets. We love the Southern style food and stuff. And I'm like, we can't produce the same stuff because it just doesn't last. And then people don't like it when it gets to their door. It's cold, it's wet, it's soggy, So eventually people stopped ordering from us. And then, of course, just naturally, just having less customers just made it really hard to stay open. And my partner was like, he's like, I hate to say this, Alex, I don't think that we can keep your part of the business in the business. And I told him, I said, trust me, I understand. I'm like, I'm a chef. I know that it's much more expensive to keep a restaurant open than it is to keep a coffee shop open. His stuff was practically always money. You're basically selling water. Hot water that is infused with tea or coffee, but water. Food, it's very different. So I had to stop and move away, and we closed our business, and he reopened the business somewhere else as just a coffee shop. But yeah, so it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate, but that's okay because I think what I do now is better. I mean, I loved cooking. I loved our old place, but I don't get the same satisfaction that I get doing this, being here with you guys, talking about history. I just always liked history more than food. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Chris says it almost destroyed his health working 65 plus hours a week at Golden Corral. Yeah, those jobs are hard. Yeah. I had one of my employees, it was the first time I ever was my own chef. I had worked as a contract to open a cafe somewhere else. So somebody hired me to basically design their kitchen, build it. So I literally did the blueprints, built it, and then managed it as the chef. And, you know, I had these employees. I had to work under really strict guidelines. The owner of the business did not believe in hiring experienced people. He thought, you're the chef, you're the one with the experience. We're going to hire people who don't have experience, who cost really cheap, and you're going to have to teach them to do everything. So I literally had to teach them to make specialized food with a high quality, and most of them had never even boiled water. But I was there every day before we opened the business, every single day, and I bring the employees in and I teach them the basics of cooking, the basics of knife work, all that stuff. And I had this, you know, this one employee, she had been from job to job. She was a good worker, but just not very skilled in anything. And she knew it, and she was really sad about it. She was worried that I was going to be another one of those bosses that just fired her because she didn't really know anything. And another thing, too, was she had also been a high school dropout. She wasn't very good at math. But when you're working with recipes, it requires a lot of, like, basic math. You know, just doing, like, dividing, multiplying fractions and decimals of recipes. And she was not good at that. And I told her, I said, look, I'm not good at that stuff either. But I'm like, with enough practice, with enough, you know, effort, I'm like, you'll find a different way to think of it. You won't even think of it as numbers anymore. You know, when I think about dividing recipes of tablespoons or grams, because some things are weighed out, some things are volume measure, but I don't even think of it in terms of, like, how many tablespoons I gotta cut in half or whatever. I can picture it in my head. I can picture the tablespoon and imagine it half full, you know? Like, so I'm able to get around my issue with numbers by visualizing stuff. And I was trying to teach her how to do that. And I remember one day, I'm like trying to teach her something really complex. She goes, I just don't think I'm going to get it. I'm so sorry. She's like, I'm so sorry. She's like, I don't think I'm going to get it. I'm like, I think you will. I'm like, I have every confidence that you will. I'm like, it'll just take more time. And I'm like, and I have all the patience in the world. And she looked at me and she said, you're the best boss I've ever had. And I'm like, really? Why? She's like, you really care about people. You know, she's like, you're the hardest worker in the kitchen, which says a lot because you're the boss. You know, she's like, but you're also just really patient with everybody. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm like, because I've worked jobs where nobody had the patience for me, and all I ever wished was that they did, you know. So I loved work. I loved being my own boss. I was a nice guy. I really was. I think some people don't know if I'm that kind of person, but I really am. So, but yeah. Jesus says, my friend's husband thought it was weird for me to love Disneyland so much that it was for kids. He was unhappy when I clapped back with the fact that he collected Hot Wheels. Let people like things. I know, right? You know, Walt Disney designed Disneyland not just for kids. You know, when Disneyland opened in 1955, and from then all the way till now, they have had the same ratio of adults to children. 4 adults to 1 child. 4 adults to 1 child. They've always had the same ratio. And the reason why was because Walt Disney didn't just design Disneyland for kids. He wanted it to be something nostalgic for adults. You know, in his dedication speech, you know, he said, I'm trying to remember. To all who come to this happy place, welcome. Disneyland is your land. Here age relives fond memories of the past, and here youth may savor the challenge and promise the future. So here age, meaning old people, will, you know, relive fond memories of the past, and here youth will savor the challenge and promise of the future. So that's the point of Disneyland. It was a place for everybody, not just people who have kids, but just people who want to be people. You know, Walt would bring his friends over all the time to Disneyland. Just random people. He brought, you know, he brought all kinds of celebrities, Art Linkletter, and, you know, and what's his name, Billy Graham. You know, like just all kinds of people that Walt personally knew. What's that famous artist? I think he's a photographer. I don't remember his name. Just Walt brought all kinds of adults to Disneyland because he wanted to show people that it's not just a place for kids. It was built for adults to have fun too, you know. So, yeah. But yeah, those people that are like, oh, it's just for kids, and they go and they collect Hot Wheels for a living. It's just like, how can you? Yeah, I don't know. Top impressive line. Yeah, I have heard that the SS Imperator was referred to he, him. Little Gamer says, I wrote a joke essay with the revolt against the British Empire in 1874 in British Raj, India. I think Raj is at Rajasthan, I think. Geshmik says, I'm a professional musician here in LA, conservatory trained. Due to chronic pain, I haven't been able to work for years. Your videos provide me with much needed distraction. Really appreciated. Oh, thank you so much. This is exactly why I do this, you know, just to hang out with people, you know. To paraphrase the Bible, never argue with a fool. If you win, you lose. Is that really in the Bible? Never argue with a fool. Even if you win, you lose. Let's see. Oh, jeez. Dino says, you should do a video on making a loaf of bread. Oh, no. I was originally going to do videos on this channel where I recreated food off the menu of Queen Mary, right? But first of all, when I looked at the menu, I was like, I can't afford this. I still can't. I earn more money than I did back then, but I still can't afford it. I'm like, I can't afford that. Like, I can't afford to buy a rack of lamb. Like, what in the world, you know? So, but the other thing too is, I tried like filming the process of even just making one of my little tea sandwiches. And the process of filming yourself cooking is really hard. It's really annoying. So I was like, that's why I never finished the video, because I was like, I hate this. Yeah, Rena says, Julia Child is a badass. Yes, she really was. She really was. One of my favorite idols. Years of Sea says, are there any pictures that you have of the Queen Mary entering New York in September 1939? I might, but I don't think any of mine are labeled, so I don't really know. I know, like, there are several photos I have that I know is the Queen Mary entering New York sometime in the late 30s. But specifically 1939, no, I don't know. Rena Rosales says, I'm the worst cook ever. Oh, jeez. But Rena says, to be fair, I work full-time and I'm a mom. Well, you have an excuse then. Working full-time is very difficult. And then trying to come home and cook. Oh, God. I had people all the time that would be like, oh, Alex, when you go home from work, I bet you just, you cook yourself a nice dinner. I'm like, you'll be surprised. I'm like, after a day of cooking for people, I am so exhausted, I do not want to cook for myself. I'm like, I go home and I get McDonald's. I'm like, which is not healthy, but I'm like it's so difficult. Jesus says, you receive death threats? That is ridiculous, because you're the least controversial guy on YouTube and someone still sends that crap to you. Thank you. I know, I am the least controversial person on YouTube, but yeah, I do receive death threats. Brian says, Alex, what other history do you have of the Queen Mary? I'm a different Brian, okay, from USA. Okay, what other history do I have of Queen Mary? Just basically what's on my channel so far. There will be more stuff, I just haven't done it yet. Like, just stuff on, like, the design elements, the style of the ship, the passengers and what it was like to live as a passenger, live as a crew member, and a lot of the engineering stuff I still want to get into, but I just haven't made videos about it yet. So it's things like that, but pretty much you can find the whole history of the ship already on my channel, and it's under my playlist called Queen Mary docu-series, like documentary series, but docu-series. And if you play that from beginning to end, it starts off with the trailer for the video I'm doing with the late Academy Award-winning actor Ernest Borgnine. I have his narration. I'm working with my friends Steve and Rob from the Yarrow Project to talk about the Yarrow Project. And years ago they had Ernest Borgnine record all the audio for a video they wanted to produce, but they never made the video. So I'm making the video. And it is taking a long time because, well, every time I create a section of the video, I have to get it approved by Steve and Rob, because it's ultimately it's their brainchild. They want to have a say in what the video looks like and sounds like and all that stuff. So it is kind of like a back and forth. I have to like make some bits, send it to them, make sure they're okay with it, and then I can proceed from there. So it's been one of those things where it just takes a long time. But also the other reason too is because it will be the most professional looking video I've ever made. I want it to look really like it is fit for television. But that takes a longer time than just what I normally do. So so yeah, that's part of the reason why the video isn't out yet. But there's the trailer for that. Then there's a walkthrough of Queen Mary filmed in 2020. And then there's the history of the ship, starting from the moment she was built, going all the way to the end of World War II, and then some random history bits about the speed of the ship and all that. So lots of great videos on the Queen Mary on my channel, and more to come. Kane says, I made twice baked potatoes for Easter. Nice. Brian says, what fact is awesome of the RMS Queen Mary? Oh, someone asked me that on Wednesday, and I had mentioned one. Oh, but I guess to try to find another one. I don't even know where to begin. There's just so many, like, I could pick out and be like, oh, that's great. But I guess the rudder, I guess, is really cool. Queen Mary has the largest rudder ever put on a passenger ship. It's the heaviest. It's the largest. And after they installed it on the Queen Mary, they just never needed it for another ship. Like, no other ship needed one. So, yeah, Queen Mary had the largest rudder ever put on it. Well, Queen Elizabeth, too. They had identical rudders. So I guess I can't just say it was just Queen Mary. Queen Elizabeth had it, too. But yeah, 2 largest rudders ever put on a ship. And they still are today. Still are. So, any ships larger than Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth, they usually used like 2 rudders or something like that, you know. Not ocean liners necessarily. A lot of military vessels, but had more than 1 rudder. But yeah, Queen Mary, yeah, big. In case you want to know how big the rudder is, it is equal to the weight of the tonnage of the Mayflower. It is also the equivalent of like 9, I think it was 9, no, more, 1930s Rolls Royces. Am I thinking of it wrong? That sounds like too light. But yeah, the equal to the tonnage of the Mayflower. Oh, I'm thinking the anchor is equal to the anchor is equal to 9 Rolls Royces from the 1930s. Okay, but the rudder is equal to the tonnage of the Mayflower. And another thing that's interesting about the Queen Mary's rudder is it's one of the few rudders ever built that you could actually climb inside of it. Most rudders that are built are too narrow to fit anybody in them. They're usually, and a lot of times they're solid, like Titanic's rudder was solid metal. The Queen Mary's was hollow because it was so huge that it didn't need to be solid. It had a space inside, a crawl space really, but it was big enough you could get inside of it. And they had hatches along the edge of the rudder so that way workmen could get inside the rudder and take care of it. In fact, that's one of the things when the ship gets dry docked, whenever they build the new dry dock, which will be years from now. But whenever they do, they will have to climb inside of the rudder to see what condition it's in. Now, the divers who last checked the Queen Mary in 2021 said the rudder looked fine. But you still need to climb inside of it. Unfortunately, the ship needs to be in dry dock for you to climb inside the rudder because the hatches are located outside the rudder. So, yeah, no one's seen the inside of Queen Mary's rudder since 1969. Waffle Butcherton says, Alex, you're looking fly as hell. Where do you shop? I don't shop anywhere. I don't even know how I said, like, this jacket I got years and years ago. God, how was it really 10 years ago? Wow, I think it was 10 years ago. I went to a Salvation Army, what do you call it? Those the places where they sell stuff. And yeah, this was a used jacket I got from Salvation Army, along with a black blazer I have as well. And it fit me, and I was like, awesome, I'll take it. I mean, gray isn't really my color, but it works for some things. The clothes I have that I buy, I just get them off Amazon, or if I happen to be at a store and I think something looks really good and it fits on me and stuff like that, I'll buy it. But yeah, I generally don't go to stores that much to buy clothes. I usually buy all my clothes online, and the reason why is because I'm a big guy, so not a lot of stores carry my sizes. Some do, but not very many anymore. So I have to buy my clothes online. So yeah. Jackson James says, you know if there are any intact third-class areas on the Queen Mary? Yes, actually. The third-class garden lounge, which is on A deck. Yeah, which is on... No, that's the promenade main deck. A deck. Okay, so it's on the garden lounge. Well, now, where is it? There's nothing on promenade deck for third class. So below it is main deck. It has to be on main deck. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so third class garden lounge on main deck is still there. A chunk of the third class main restaurant is still there. Not all of it, but a chunk of it is still there. You can still go down the third class grand staircase. I mean, technically it was the only staircase in third class, but you can still go down it today. It's still there. You can also enter, well, okay, sometimes it depends on if it's open, but they have what is called the Caronia and Corinthia rooms. Yeah, and that's on B deck, I think. And those are still there. They're little lounges. And they're still there, still fully paneled out. Technically, and this will blow your guys' minds, but technically the observation bar is also a third class area. Observation bar was originally built for first class in the 1930s, but after the 1950s, yeah, mid-1950s to late 1950s, they converted the observation bar to be part of third class. And the reason was because by that point, third class was becoming more and more leisure travel for people who could afford to travel, but just not afford first class. And the thing was, Cunard wanted to attract more third-class passengers because let's just be honest here, third class made their, Queen Mary made its money from third class, not from first class. First class costed them money to operate, but third class is what made them money. So Cunard made attempts to expand offerings for third class on the Queen Mary, and one of those was giving third class exclusive access to the observation bar on promenade deck. So if you can imagine, observation bar became a third-class area. So that technically is a third-class area that's still around. And technically, the first-class smoking room is still walkable. But the problem with the third-class smoking room is it's been converted to the Cunard story exhibit. So it's a bunch of exhibits, different rooms. It was chopped up and sectionalized, but technically you can walk around in the area that was the third-class smoking room. So there's still a few places left that belong to third class, but the most intact places you can find is observation bar, the garden lounge on main deck, and then on, I think it's B deck, is the Caronia and Corinthia lounges. Yeah. Oh, nice. Dino met Art Linkletter. That's pretty cool. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much. Jesus says, I always wanted to create content, but I was always nervous about stalkers. I have a wife and 2 kids. Should I bother creating content for fear of death threats? You know, that is not something I could answer for you. For me, I continue making content because my personal belief is I have not yet reached the point where I feel that it's not worth it anymore. I still feel like, you know, I'm safe enough to keep going. But if you were to start a channel, you have to be very careful with... Random yawn. You have to be really careful with what you say online. You know, when I talk to people and I tell them my personal stories, like I've done on this live stream, I have to be really careful what I say. I can't tell them where I live. I can't tell them the names of my friends and family unless by first name only. You know, I try not to show off who my family is too much. My dad wants to create a YouTube channel, so, you know, his face is going to be on it, so it's not like I can really hide that very much. But, you know, there's things like that. So I would just say, like, when you create a channel, you have to be very, very careful about what you're saying to people, and always be conscious of what you're showing them as well, because, you know, it's like I said, I keep the blinds shuttered behind me because the building behind me has its address on it, and I don't want people to see my address and know where I live. But, you know, so you have to just be always really cautious and really careful. I've posted videos before, like I posted a tour of my apartment at one point, and there was an object there that had my full name on it, my full name, and I was like, I can't show that to people, so I had to re-edit the whole thing. I took it off of YouTube, re-edit it to remove the name. So you just have to be really careful, just like really careful. I used to not be so careful because I didn't. This was years and years ago before I had those problems, but it was one day I was at Disneyland and, you know, I bought something and somebody left me a comment saying, oh, by the way, your receipt was in the video and we could see your like full name and everything. I was like, oh my God. So I had to cut that out of the video. So yeah, you just have to be really, really careful what you put on, you know, what you put out in the public. And, you know, it's always a struggle to be authentic, but not to reveal too much for your own privacy and safety. So it is a struggle. So Chris says, hey Alex, I meant to say, would Walt Disney like me because I am from Marceline, Missouri? I think he'd be more inclined to talk to you because you're from Marceline, Missouri. But Walt always was the kind of person that if you were a good person, he liked you. So if you're a good person, he would have liked you. Little Gamer says, this stream feels less boring than most others. Thank you. I try to make them interesting. Pelly says, will you be tuning into the THG updated? Oh, I am yawning. Why? Will you be tuning into the THG updated real-time Titanic sinking live stream this Friday? I will be honest, I don't know if I will. It will be happening very late at night, and it takes hours. I've watched one of their streams before for that, and it takes hours. So I don't know if I will be there. Yeah. Let's see. Kevin says, USS Enterprise CVN-65 had twin rudders. I was thinking about that when I mentioned that military vessels sometimes have more than one rudder. The first thing I thought of was the USS Enterprise. Because my dad's a big fan of the USS Enterprise. He was building a model of it all my life, and then I accidentally destroyed it. But I'm not even kidding. He was working on that model since he was 14, and then he gave it to me, and I had to move, and I was packing it up, and I destroyed it. And I felt really bad. But yeah, but that model had twin rudders on it, so that's how I knew. Pretty cool. Yeah, why would that person do that? Okay, so Goofy says, I wonder if AI could go through a video and automatically delete things like your... Oh my god, why am I yawning? Go through things and delete things like your name and address. I'm sure one day it can. Hey Zeus, yeah, it's always safe. You know, like, the thing is YouTube channels where, see, here's the thing that sucks, is, like, you got people who can make really great content, you know, they have a great family, you know, like, there's this one guy that watches, like, Star Wars movies and TV shows with his son, and it's a really wholesome channel. But then you got other channels where it's like people have had to, you know, blur their children's faces because there are people who will just say and do horrible things. And so that's the thing that sucks, is, like, I wish we could live in a society where, like, having, you know, a fun time with your kids on YouTube isn't such a dangerous or scary thing, you know. So I hear you, you know, I can't even stand how things have gotten in this world, in this country, you know, when it comes to that. So yeah. Brian says, did you see my comment? Yeah, but I mean, there's nothing for me to answer. You didn't ask me any questions. Well, I guess about Mary Celeste, but I don't know who that is. I don't know. Conrad says, hey Alex, hi everyone, happy Easter. I might hit up Queen Mary this Thursday. Awesome. Hope you enjoy it. Jackson says, what is your opinion on restoring the SS United States to a hotel museum like the Queen Mary? I think that, so it could work, but the thing is that the amount of money it would cost to literally fit out all the interiors would be exorbitant. And even then, you know, there aren't much original interiors left that you could buy or collect from private collections. So almost the entire thing that you do fit out on the ship would be brand new, even if you designed it to look original. So there is an element to a history museum. You know, like, people go to the Queen Mary because she still has a lot of her historic interiors. I know that there's this weird rumor that most of the ship is missing, but it's not. Most of the ship is there. But that's the thing. You go to the Queen Mary because she's old, because she's original, and she's got all those old interiors. But when you go to the SS United States, the best you could do is to fill it full of, you know, brand new replicated interiors. And that won't appeal to as many people. You know, it's different with Titanic. If you were to rebuild Titanic, that's different because Titanic is like the most famous ship in the world and everybody wants to see it. So, but not everybody knows what the SS United States is, nor why it's so historic or, you know, that kind of thing. So that's the problem, is that it's a very huge risk. It's like you could spend all this money to restore the interiors of SS United States and then make nothing back from it. So that's the problem. Chris Surface, let's try to keep the conversation, you know, G-rated for families, because it's getting a bit scary. Little Gamer says, what about kids on the RMS Queen Mary? You'll need to be a bit more specific. I don't know what you mean. Brian says, what country are you from, Alex? Just asking. I am from the United States. I was born and raised here in the U.S., specifically Southern California. I've, you know, lived in various parts of Southern California and visited various states in my whole life, but I've never left the United States before. I plan to. I'm hoping to save up money for my trip to the UK, so the first country I'll ever visit outside the U.S. will be England. Yeah, so pretty excited about that. I've always wanted to you know, kind of travel and, you know, learn and explore more places, so yeah. But otherwise, yeah, I am from the United States. All right. Brian says Mary Celeste is an old merchant ship. Okay. Is it like one of those sailing ships, like a what do you call that? Like a sailing ship or something? Don't know what else to call it besides sailing ship. From Nova Scotia, he says. Okay. Yeah, I've never heard of it, but I love watching the train go by. It's one of my favorite things. I love trains so much. I'm such a nerd. Oh, it was a sailing ship. Okay. Nice. Now, it was a merchant ship. Okay, so thank you, Chris. Wow, we're coming up on 3 hours. But, you know, that's because I had a lot of fun talking. You know, I don't even, like, I always do these streams with the intention that it'll only really be like an hour long, and then it ends up being 3 hours long, because I just have so much fun. Like, I have other things I should be getting to, because it's like the weekend, but my weekend goes by so fast. You know, like, I allot the weekdays to just work straight through making videos. Like, Monday mornings, I wake up, start working on videos. I don't stop till like 6 p.m., you know, and it's like that Monday through Friday. And then I always go, okay, I'm going to save Saturday and Sunday as my days off where I don't work on videos. But then, like, before I know it, you know, I'm waking up in the morning and it's already Sunday morning, you know, and then I'm just, you know, I barely get to making myself something to eat and just reading my emails and comments. And then next thing you know, it's already time for me to prepare for tea time. And then I spend 3 hours on tea time. And what's going to happen after this is I'm going to, you know, fix myself something to eat for dinner. And then, you know, if I have time, I'll watch a few YouTube videos. But then tomorrow morning I'll have to wake up and make more videos and stuff. So I always feel like my weekends go by really fast, but I wanted to go on a walk today, but because it was raining today. I don't mind the rain. I'll walk in the rain. I love the weather up here in Oregon. So I will don my rain jacket and go walking through the puddles. But my dad won't. And so I was kind of like, well, if he doesn't want to go walking, then I probably don't want to go walking either. But that's what I need. I need a walking buddy. I need someone who will go with me walking somewhere, come rain or sunshine, because I need to get out of the house more. Daniel says, I really love the fornies with the valve gear exposed. Oh yeah, okay. The outside frame locomotives, yeah. The outside frame ones have the valve gears exposed. Years of Sea says, I've been thinking about making models out of wood by carving it, but I don't know where I'd get all the wood from and how to cut it. I'm not sure. Yeah, you would need to start with a really soft wood, like basswood or something like that. And then what you do is you get a block of it, because you can buy blocks online, even on Amazon. You get a really sharp knife. Pocket knives are really good. Like small, thin-bladed pocket knives, not the big wide blade ones that people use to stab people with. But you take one of those pocket knives, or actually there are specific knives called whittling knives. Whittling knives are used for carving. And what you do is on the block, you draw out the shape of what you want to cut from the top and from the sides and from the bottom. And you carefully measure it out so it all matches. And then you just start cutting it down to size and down to shape. And that's how you carve something. I've done it before. I don't do it very often, but I have done it before. I would show you, but I never kept any of it. So I'm not an expert of it either, but I know that's how to start. So I know that's how you start it. Hello, Ron. Oh, you're leaving. Okay, see you later, Ron. Goofy Roll says, loving your train doesn't make you a nerd, it makes you an interesting feller. Well, you know, I don't consider being a nerd a bad thing. I like being a nerd. I'm nerd about Star Wars, about ocean liners, about trains, about, you know, steam history. I'm such a nerd. I love being a nerd. Little Gamer says, what are the chances of a kid destroying something aboard the Queen Mary? I guess the same chances of an adult destroying something aboard the Queen Mary. I mean, people have destroyed stuff. Like, people have literally, like, stolen handles out of the cabinets and stuff like that on the Queen Mary. You know, kids destroying stuff. It happened. You know, before the Queen Mary closed for the pandemic, there were YouTubers that went to the Queen Mary and destroyed the Queen Mary. And they were, like, teenagers. What's that one guy that got canceled? Sean something. He went to the Queen Mary, went all the way to the isolation wards, climbed up onto one of the old bunk beds. It was a recreation bunk bed, but still, he climbed up onto the bunk bed, sat down on it really hard, and snapped it. And to this day, it is snapped in half from when he broke it, like 10 years ago. Yeah, it is, like, incredible. So, but I mean, you know, it's just the same chances that any adult would destroy something. You just have to have a place very well guarded by security and just, you know, watch out for it. Jesus says, I need to get out of the house more too, but the Texas sun tells me to stay inside. Oh, I believe it. Oh my God. The sun in the southern states is just hellish. Now, when I lived in Southern California, though, I didn't like going on walks very often because it was always hot outside and the sun was always blaring, and I would always get really bad, like, so I'm half white, half Latino, so I have very fair skin. You've seen how light my skin is. When I go outside, I get really, really sunburned, and I would always have to put on SPF whatever, 30 or something like that. One time I had SPF 50, I think. A friend of mine gave it to me, but, you know, I would put on stuff like all the time, and I would always be greasy everywhere I went because I would burn so easily in the sunlight. I was always like, I want to live somewhere where the sun almost never comes out. Here I am. It's always rainy here, which I love. So that means there's less UV light outside. There's always UV light during the daytime, but there's less because of the clouds. And yeah, I don't have to worry about getting really bad sunburns anymore. Chris says, wouldn't mind having a 1/6 skill RC RMS Britannic too. Yeah, a lot of people would love to have some RC ocean liners. Brian says, do some research on the Mary Celeste. I'll take a look at it. I won't do any deep research, but I'll take a look at it. Really, Ears of Sea says, I love Star Wars. You're not alone. I'm a nerd in, like, all of my friend groups, and not sure any of my friends besides me... no. Not sure any of my friends besides a few know that I love the Age of Steam like you. Wow. Yeah, I mean, there are a few people I know that have that. Like, my friend Chris, for instance, he loves, like, Steam technology. But he's the only one of his friends besides me that does. So it's like... You know, he would tell me, he's like, oh yeah, like, he's like, at least I have someone to talk to about ocean liners and ships and stuff like that. He's like, because he's like, none of his friends talk to him about that stuff. You know, they're not interested. So, yeah, I'm the same thing. Like, well, my dad likes the same stuff I do, so I can talk to him about stuff and talk to him about Star Wars and all that stuff. And he'll hold a conversation with me, but I don't have, besides, well, no, that's not fair to say. All my friends now like that stuff. All my friends now do. But there was a point where I didn't have friends that liked that stuff. I made it a point to surround myself with people who have the same interests I do. Not necessarily the same opinions I do. I don't mind. I like that my friends all have different opinions on things, because I can get different perspectives and learn different aspects of things. But what I do like is that they all have the same interests that I do. So it's always easy to have a conversation. So, Little Gamer says, is it rainy outside or is that the train? It is very rainy outside. Well, it's very rainy outside, but right now there is no rain. You're hearing the train go by. Years to see says, I'm part Italian and part French. My last name is French, rooted. Nice. Yeah, believe it or not, my last name is Egyptian. But I can't reveal too much about that. I don't want to tell people my last name. Little Gamer says, I think documentary style videos get more views. Is that true? I have noticed that my videos where I specifically make them to be designed like a documentary get more views. Yeah. And a lot of the views I get on those documentary videos lean more towards the age demographic of 65 and older. I would wish to see more young people get interested in that stuff, but I can't force young people to be interested in ships and trains. So, but nevertheless, yeah, they do get more views generally, the documentaries, versus just random, like, little subject videos. Wisteria says, quick question, what is your favorite public room on the Queen Mary? So my favorite public room that still exists on the Queen Mary is the first class main lounge on Promenade Deck. But my favorite room that no longer exists on the Queen Mary is the second class overflow lounge, which was located underneath the second class main lounge. So the second class main lounge was on main deck, but the overflow lounge was on A deck. And the overflow lounge was really beautiful. Just really beautiful. Well, in my opinion, it's beautiful. Some people would still feel like observation bar looked a lot nicer, and I wouldn't argue with them against that. I think there's an element of the overflow lounge that I like for some reason. Chris says, Alex, a Type 2 phaser pistol is better weapon than a lightsaber. You know, it could be. It really could be. Years of Sea says, one of my ancestors signed the Mayflower Compact. Not many people signed it, at least compared to the 8 billion people in the world. Wow, that's pretty cool. Little Gamer says, perhaps borrow the thumbnail styles of other ocean liner channels. No, I don't. I like my thumbnails. I think they turn out very good. Brian says, can you make a video comparing RMS Queen Mary to Mary Celeste? I don't think so. You know, I don't really cover sailing ships in my channel. You know, my channel's all about the age of steam, not the age of sail. And then the other thing, too, is the Queen Mary is so different from the sailing ship Mary Celeste. It's like comparing, you know, like a plate to an apple. It's like, you know, it's literally like comparing a plate to an apple. You're just like, okay, you know, they have a basic foundation of the same thing. You might put apples on a plate, but you don't eat the plate. So, you know, it's just things like that. I don't think it'll work very well. All right. Well, folks, I am going to call it the end of the stream because we have been here for 3 hours. My back is starting to hurt. And I have to figure out what I'm going to do for dinner. I think I've got leftovers I'm going to heat up. But, yeah. So, anyway, folks, I hope you've all had a really good Easter. I know I have. I mean, I normally don't even celebrate Easter, so doing these live streams, especially like today, was kind of really cool to do on Easter. And then, let's see, we'll do a tea time or some other, not necessarily tea time, but maybe some other kind of live stream on Wednesday. And then Friday, we'll see if we can have a history video out for you guys on Friday. I would like to. I need to. So we'll have that out. There's a video you guys have all been anticipating. I will not name it because every time I name the video, I jinx myself and I don't get the video done in time. So, but yeah, do that. And then, yeah. All right, folks. Thank you all for joining me. And I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.